The scene opens in a deep valley, surrounded by jagged cliffs that look like sharp, serrated blades. Thousands of corpses lie scattered everywhere, each one pierced through by sharp, gleaming swords. In the middle of that blood-drenched battlefield, one person still clung to life, though his situation was no less tragic than those who had already fallen. He coughed up a large mouthful of blood, accompanied by a desperate thought, "It's really over." His hand was gripping his wound, trying to reach for the weapon embedded deep in his body. Yet, no matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't budge. The holy sword had pierced straight through his heart. Those desperate, struggling movements caught the eyes of the group standing opposite him, like the last faint flicker of light in the depths of a dark cellar. "It's over, we finally took him down." He slumped over, revealing dozens of sharp sword tips protruding from his back, a stark contrast to the terrifying nickname they had just uttered, the Devil of the Continent, the Necromancer who summoned the soul of Archimonde. At that moment, hearing that title from the mouths of his enemies sounded like nothing more than a cruel mockery. But he didn't have the mind to care anymore, he only poured his remaining strength into gripping the sword in his chest. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, the situation couldn't be changed. Cold sweat began to beat on his temples, accompanied by the weary realization that he was standing on the threshold of death. Just then, a barrage of images flooded his mind, the Great Continental War that had lasted for 10 years. It had been a coordinated campaign, with the Imperial Vanguard acting as the spearhead while elite forces carried out raids. Even though he had anticipated it and set up defensive lines, he had ultimately failed. A complete and utter failure. Suddenly, a pristine figure appeared before him, a total contrast to his current disheveled state, making his already furious heart feel even more unsettled. And it was all because of that knight, Northern Cavalry Captain Burkle Rainland. When he reached a suitable distance, he stopped and spoke up, "I didn't win by my own strength alone." Golden hair fell to cover his cold eyes, making it impossible to see what Burkle was feeling, with only a heavy, weary voice echoing out, "It was thanks to the blood and sacrifice of countless others that my sword was able to reach you." Golden hair fell to cover his cold eyes, making it impossible to see what Burkle was feeling, with only a heavy, weary voice echoing out, "It was thanks to the blood and sacrifice of countless others that my sword was able to reach you." Yet, before Burkle could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the other's loud voice, "Shut your mouth." Ignoring his thousands of critical wounds, he mustered his strength to expose the hypocritical face of the man before him. "You watched as the people died from the plague, and now you dare to speak of peace? You lot are worse than beasts." Burkle kept his gaze steady, looking forward, it unclear whether he was ignoring a dying man or simply accepting the curses. "You damn knight." The more he spoke, the more the killing intent deepened in Archimonde's eyes. "You're all just a bunch of hypocrites. I will be the one to make humanity." Before the words were even finished, his palm flashed with brilliant green energy. That gesture immediately made those surrounding him widen their eyes in fear, and they couldn't help but blurt out, "Is he still intending to use dark magic in that state?" A soldier turned to ask Burkle for his thoughts. "It's too dangerous, we must finish Archimonde off immediately." But the captain only replied with two cold words, "Stop." Accusations kept ringing out in the quiet space. 20 million people fell to the plague, and you turned them into your own army of corpses. That was the spark for this war. As memories of that scene flooded back, he only felt more disgusted by the hypocrite standing opposite him. "Don't make me laugh, do you think I don't know?" From deep within his cold, blue-lit eyes, a look of world weariness appeared. "Among those 20 million people, there were surely your own villagers. You did all of this just for revenge. Am I wrong?" Even though he was pointed at like that, Burkle remained silent and did not refute a single word. After a few seconds of silence, the sword in Burkle's hand shifted slightly, accompanied by a declaration. "I came here for one reason only, for the sake of the children's future." The silver weapon in his hand was covered in a blazing red power, accompanied by killing intent that could not be ignored. That statement hit Archimonde like a bucket of cold water. For a moment, his body seemed to freeze, and he could only stutter a few meaningless words. "What was that?" Burkle calmly explained his stance. "My choices, my beliefs, and my hopes are the things I must leave behind for the next generation." Suddenly, Archimonde's pupils constricted as a contrasting scene appeared clearly in his vision, the image of his own disheveled self reflected in the other's eyes. Coincidentally, at that moment in the sky, the dark clouds gave way to dazzling sunlight. Shining directly down on the protagonist of that world, it further affirmed the stark difference between Burkle and him. Burkle moved his lips to finish his speech, "For the future of my descendants." Those few simple words carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, causing Archimonde to crumble to his knees, unable to bear it. It was unclear if his strength had run out or if something inside him had collapsed. He wearily uttered a surrender. Finish me off. To everyone's surprise, Burkle dropped his weapon. This action caused the soldiers nearby to panic. Wait, Burkle, if you throw away the holy sword. The warning hadn't even finished before he drew another sword, which featured purple ancient runes and looked even more powerful than the previous one. Burkle did not hesitate to turn the tip of the blade toward the man kneeling before him. Do you have any final words? Even though he was the one who had suggested it, he couldn't help but mutter a few things. A necromancer who summons ghosts doesn't die that easily. A powerful force suddenly surged down, causing his body to shake violently. After that, his consciousness was completely severed. His final sentence remained incomplete. One day, Burkle lived up to his reputation as a brilliant tactician, acting decisively and giving his enemy no chance to turn the tables. Drops of bright red blood sprayed into the air and fell like rain, causing his naturally dark blue eyes to dim slightly. The ancient runes on the blade felt the thick scent of blood and became even more dazzling. After a few seconds of silence, the soldiers nearby regained their composure and cheered. He's dead. On the cold ground, Archimonde still had a faint trace of consciousness remaining. Amidst the cheering, he heard the sound of his own body falling, but before long, his eyelids became so heavy it was hard to breathe. That was the end of the 10-year Great War and the devil of the continent. The end of me, the mage Archimonde. The sky was thick with dark clouds, heavy rain poured down incessantly, and thunder roared without stopping. Everything only served to highlight the warm yellow light radiating from the towering mansion. Inside the cozy room, two maids looked excitedly in one direction. Did you see that? The young master's mouth just moved. The chatter buzzed incessantly. Oh my, really? Archimonde looked blankly at the strange scene in front of him. Where am I? The two maids, unaware of his confusion, smiled and coaxed him. Did you sleep well, young Master Klein? In their hands was a carefully preserved picture of a woman. Seeing the young master's lips trembling, the maid was extremely excited. Say mama. At that moment, he played along and made his first sounds. The two maids were moved to tears, the locket with the picture in it swaying incessantly. How wonderful, the baby already knows how to talk. Not failing their expectations, the young master didn't just know how to talk, he spewed out a shocking string of words. O protectors of the shadows, my servants and soldiers, I, Archimonde, order you to assemble. Obey my command. The distance between joy and shock turned out to be thinner than expected. The maid's face went pale as a sheet upon hearing that, and she couldn't even hold the string in her hand, letting it fall. The thunder outside seemed to receive a signal and became even more frantic. A bolt of lightning struck directly down onto the Rainland mansion, creating a terrifying, blinding flash of light. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 15 years had passed since that fateful night. In the familiar grounds of the Rainland family, the maids all blushed, looking in the same direction. Have you seen him? Following their gazes, a pair of legs as long as a male model's appeared, followed by graceful features, accompanied by the unbridled praise of the crowd nearby. That face, that hair, it's truly a masterpiece of the gods. A handsome teenager appeared, his looks causing those nearby to stare in awe. The combination of that silver hair and those eyes could mesmerize any female creature within a 1-kilometer radius. When Klein approached, the surrounding praise only increased. He looks so handsome today, he's just glowing. I wonder what young Master Klein eats to be that beautiful. Knowing the flattering words flying into his ears, he remained calm. Suddenly, a low voice sounded right behind him, making Klein freeze. Found you. Before he could react, a bucket of water was dumped straight over his head. The person standing behind him immediately growled another sentence, cold and merciless, "Get out of here, you evil spirit." Right after that, the church priest, Garison Veerman, pretended to be surprised, letting out a line full of drama. How strange, just a moment ago your eyes looked exactly like Archimonde's. But he couldn't maintain the act for long. The next sentence was him taking credit for himself, despite the disgusted looks from the maids nearby. I say that, but 3 people have already been mesmerized. Lucky I purified him just in time. Klein, on the contrary, kept his dead fish, expressionless face and turned to ask, it's not easy to say such crazy things with such confidence. Don't you get tired of doing this pointless purification ritual for so many years? Garison explained himself seriously. It's not pointless at all. Archimonde's soul is residing in your body, so I must periodically purify that evil. Klein wearily repeated his familiar line for the nth time. But I've already told you, it's not me. Unexpectedly, as he turned his face, he was hit with a spray from the bottle Garison had ready. That's exactly that Archimonde expression. Klein reached up to rub his chin, muttering loud enough for the other to hear, is he actually crazy? Then, while walking backward, he repeated his insult, crazy old man. Before he could slip away, Garison shouted an order, catch him. Two servants emerged from nowhere, answered loudly, and chased after their target. The culprit watched the situation unfold, planning how to punish the disobedient brat. For your insolence, you will have to take a holy water bath in the nude. Hearing this, Klein shouted angrily, "Don't go too far. I already told you I'm Klein. My name is Klein. You crazy old priest, are you even in your right mind?" With every step he ran, images from his past life gradually surfaced. Even he couldn't believe things had turned out this way. It was unimaginable, because clearly, he had died that day. Remembering that night still made Klein's head hurt. His means of thinking must have been severed. But when he opened his eyes, he was in the body of a child. On top of that, the first thing he uttered was Archimonde's summoning incantation. Because of that, his childhood was marred by gossip, which led to him being labeled a demon and dumped into a monastery the moment he turned 3. The situation wasn't much better until the light of heaven shone down on the child, and he met the old man who claimed to be a priest of the church. His imposing stature was the complete opposite of the other's status, but he was the life-saving straw for a mouse that had only known how to hide for years. During that first meeting, Garison had mistakenly called him by his past life name. "I am not that young Master Klein. That was just the beginning. I could say I went from one hell to another, waking up early to prayer chants, Garrison's 24 hours, at the same time having to endure Garrison's frozen holy water bath therapy, soaking in purity to ward off darkness and ignorance. Sometimes he'd mix it up with Garrison's purification fire performance, leaving Klein only able to scream, 'What kind of hell is this?' And so, he had to endure all sorts of torture in the name of purification. The once peaceful grounds constantly echoed with miserable screams for help. Yet, 15 years had passed, and Klein still couldn't get used to that frequency of torture. For instance, right now, he was no different from a corpse sitting blankly with a party hat on. Klein's personal maid, Erin, stood sincerely by his side, hands clasped in blessing, hoping young Master Klein would live up to the hero's lineage and soon become a healthy member of the family. Her steady voice echoed in his ears, making Klein's exhaustion increase, praying to the Holy Spirit, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore, snatched the hat off his head, and threw it away. "Honestly," Erin gasped, "the hat I made with my own hands." That soft sound pulled Klein back to reality. He felt like a scumbag. "Damn it, I was a bit too emotional just now. She must have put all her heart into knitting it with those small hands." So, he scratched his head and spoke up embarrassedly, "Sorry, Erin, I was a bit over the top. I have to go pick it up." And before the words were out, Erin dropped a truth bomb. Priest Garison made that. That moment felt like the world had frozen. Klein's brain seemed to short-circuit, unable to process the information he had just received. Right after that, he turned back in fear. How the hell did that happen? The person he wanted to see least at that moment was standing right there in the corner. "Young Master Klein," Garison reached out, wiping a large tear on his aged face. "I didn't expect you to wear the hat I painstakingly knitted for an entire week." "Klein, I am truly moved." This hateful, pouting demeanor made Klein nauseous. He ripped the party hat to shreds. "Yeah, I'm not wearing it anymore." This was nothing short of a slap in Garrison's face. He immediately pulled his old trick and started shouting, framing him, "It's appearing. Archimonde's evil soul." Klein didn't hold back either, immediately turning his volume up to the highest level to argue back, "It's not appearing, you monkey. Give me back that feeling of regret from just now, you filthy old priest." Just then, the room door was pulled open. Cavalry Captain Dunkel bowed solemnly to ask after Priest Garison, "Have you finished the purification ceremony?" After that, he awkwardly tried to mediate. "Rumors about young Master Klein have been around for 10 years, and even the church says he's normal now." This sudden truth was like a pause button. The two people who were busy biting each other looked over simultaneously, and without a word of warning, Garison threw Klein aside and responded warmly, "Of course, Captain Dunkel." Then both of them chatted happily. "It seems the documents you requested the other day will be a bit late. Take your time." Ignoring Klein, who was gritting his teeth in anger, lying on the ground and cursing silently. "That crazy old man, he doesn't listen to a word I say, but as soon as he meets the cavalry captain, he's right on board with everything." While he was busy thinking, "This old man is pretty good at politics, isn't he?" The conversation on the other side had reached its conclusion. Garison also said his goodbyes. "If you'll excuse me." He didn't forget to glance in this direction, and there was always a possibility. That meaningful remark made Klein feel a bit uneasy. It seemed Garison didn't want to talk too much either. He turned on his heel and left the room coldly. "Take care." Of course, he didn't forget to leave a few mocking words. next Friday is the next purification session. Remember to wash up well and wait for it. Keep your body and mind pure." Klein went mad and chased him out. "Can't you just disappear for good?" Unfortunately, his strength was limited, he could only pant in anger while supporting himself with his hands, listening to the others' fading laughter. See you next time." Then Klein collapsed onto the sofa in exhaustion. Damn it. The resentment from being tortured earlier started to spill out. A priest who tortures others? Is that guy even a real priest? The more he spoke, the more he felt his assessment was correct. He looked just like a muscular devil. Aaron gently walked over and handed him some things. "Young master, are you really okay? Here is your towel." Klein answered without even thinking, "Yeah, I'm absolutely not." I hate that guy bitterly, but no one knew that in his heart, he was rambling in the opposite direction. Not okay is an understatement. If I admit it, who knows what else he'll torture me with. I was supposed to focus on recovering my body, but I keep getting dragged away to do these rituals. Tiresome childhood memories flooded his mind again. Since reincarnating, I've always had my body monitored, and just because of the rumor that Archimand is tagging along, I've had to be locked up in the monastery for 7 years. The more he thought, the more he realized he had made a wrong move. Damn it, I thought it was so hard to get back to the Duke's mansion, only to run into that priest. Dunkel stood nearby and kindly said, "Cut him some slack, he might look like that, but he's a representative, there must be a reason he's here." Aaron heard that and curiously turned to ask, "What's a representative? Is it a high-ranking position?" Dunkel pondered the choice of words for a moment, then he softly explained for everyone to understand. "It's the title for the strongest person in the church." People's attitude toward Garrison seemed to confirm this. If you don't count the Rainland Dukes, they are the people who are so strong they have no rivals. Aaron excitedly raised her hand to praise, "The young master's family is so strong." This innocence made Dunkel laugh, of course. Seeing the atmosphere had eased up, she couldn't help but ask, "Then can I ask one more question? Who is the strongest duke in the young master's house?" This comparative question made Klein, who was drying his hair, freeze. Dunkel thought for a moment and answered, "Everyone is capable, but I think the current 7th generation duke is." Before he could finish, Klein interrupted him. "The 1st generation. As a soldier under his command, Dunkel intended to save some face for his master." "Do you mean the 1st duke?" But the 7th generation son and young master didn't give him that chance. Klein emphasized with a cold face once more, "The 1st generation duke is the strongest." This attitude made Dunkel a bit flustered. After all, he didn't dare argue with him, so he just went with the flow. "I understand, if the young master says so." Aaron was very happy to receive the answer she wanted. "See? I told you the young master admires the 1st generation duke." She even provided evidence she deemed solid. Even now, the young master is staring at his portrait. Klein heard her but didn't bother to explain, only deepened thought. Admiring him? Who would have expected that? Suddenly, his thoughts were distracted by Dunkel's exclamation, "It's been 200 years since the 1st duke founded this family." He looked at the portrait opposite him and unconsciously repeated, 200 years? Deep in that teenager's eyes, there was no vitality at all, but rather emotions very difficult to describe in words. "I still can't believe it. But perhaps now, I have to accept the truth." Each portrait flashed through Klein's mind, but it was just as vague as their memories were to him. The 7th generation, the 6th, the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, only one person was clearly visible, and even then, only in one corner. Klein also realized who it was. It was the 1st generation duke. Burkel Rainland, that golden hair and those cold eyes like the ocean were extremely familiar. The corner of Klein's mouth curled up slightly, as if he were mocking his own fate. Reincarnated again as a descendant of the man who once took his life. When Klein tried to suppress the pain invading his mind to scream at Burkel, he leisurely watched all that frantic emotion. "The reason I came here is for the sake of the children's future." Then, with a cold face, he swung his sword, handling it with a light strike. That action was so fast that while he was still staring blankly at Burkel, his vision tilted sideways. That horrific memory made Klein panic and jump up, his heart pounding, unable to stop himself from panting. Klein wearily muttered while busy wiping sweat from his face, "What a piece of trash dream." Furthermore, his brain didn't forget to remind him of his old identity so he wouldn't forget his roots. "My name is Archimand, the only one dubbed the devil of this continent. But that's a thing of the past now. I once went insane with rage and almost tore the entire continent apart. Finally, I was finished off by the Northern Knight Burkel Reinland's sword. Yet, when I woke up, 200 years had passed, and I had reincarnated as a descendant of that bastard. And it's funny that I kept my memories intact, too. I still can't get used to this hair color. Suddenly, a deep voice rang out from a corner of the room, making Klein fully wake up. Young master, you really do talk in your sleep. Or are you dreaming about the time you were still Archimonde? I quietly watched his expression and continued to comment in my head, Priest Garison, a madman who keeps torturing and treating me as if I were Archimonde all these years. For now, I'll just have to keep playing dumb in front of this jerk. Klein pretended to sigh, starting his exhausting performance. I'm just a bit tired lately. Suddenly, Aaron popped out from under the bed and spoke up. Young master, I heard everything. The things you said while sleeping. The young master destroys the continent, kills them all. Archimonde orders you. Aaron's animated reenactment made Klein panic. Quiet, Aaron, when did I ever say that? In the awkward silence, Vian suddenly knocked and entered. I am Butler Vian. Young master, the fencing demonstration is about to. But before he could finish, Garison cleared his throat to interrupt. Thank you for reporting, Aaron. It seems the young master forgot that he needs to double his purification ritual time. The way he looked, like a demon, made Klein freeze in fear. But just a split second later, he tried to muster all his strength to shout, staying in character as a hot-headed person. Don't make me laugh, you crazy priest. A while later, Klein strolled down the hallway with two servants trailing behind him, unable to help but ask, a fencing demonstration? Aaron didn't even think twice before saying, yes, young master. This time, the Duke personally requested your presence. When Klein tilted his head and asked, Father called for me? Aaron excitedly held up a bag of cookies, her eyes sparkling with hope. Young master, can I have these? But instead of being annoyed, Klein personally tore the bag open and gave it to Aaron. Don't be so strict with her, Veerman. Then he smiled, watching the girl happily enjoy the treat. She looked so happy, after all. A moment later, Klein continued to probe. What's this all about? Father has never called me to watch a demonstration before, has he? Vi remained silent for a few seconds before speaking up. Actually, it seems the people from the branch families have arrived. That information sent Klein's mind wandering to a distant place. Branch families, huh? The annoying pests are swarming in again. Just a while later, Klein was directly facing the group of strange relatives. Isn't that Klein? Hey, what's with calling him Klein? Shouldn't it be Lord Archimonde? That's right. Hello, brother. Heard you were locked up in a monastery for 7 years. Got any interesting stories? Watch out, though. If he gets angry, he might curse you. Klein calmly observed the group, dressed gaudily but with rustic expressions, making noise on one side. These were my father's cousins. He glanced to the other side, where some chubby folks were chewing loudly, and sighed internally. The others must be from the distant northern branch. They only came here to eat and drink. And where was that? The cousins from the west. Klein's eyes unconsciously locked onto a girl sitting in a chair. The strange aura radiating from her made him unable to stop thinking. That girl is definitely. But a jarring voice immediately cut through his train of thought. Looks like that brat is deaf. Does a person like you belong in my Rainland family? Seeing Klein ignoring them, the cousins were enraged and started yelling. Hey you, your elders are talking and you dare to ignore us? His arrogant words couldn't make him feel angry. What do you mean my family? I can't even be bothered to remember your names, let alone these distant relatives causing a scene here, but it's simple, the family I was reincarnated into is gradually falling apart. The fact that they look down on a direct heir like me says it all. As that thought ended, Klein looked down at the fencing area below. On the mat, the situation was nearing its end as one warrior exposed more and more openings. Dalton, frustrated by being suppressed on the mat, cleared his throat and cursed at Delin. You bastard! He hurriedly took a stance, spinning around to gain momentum to thrust his sword at Delin. Stop raising your hand, let's really go at it. However, he leisurely parried every one of his opponent's vicious attacks. What a pity, the match is over, Dalton. That look made Dalton even angrier, screaming loudly. Shut up, I haven't lost yet. Delin couldn't help but laugh involuntarily upon hearing that. Is that so? The whole scene was like a movie, making Klein think, if this family has any hope left, it rests entirely on one person. the eldest son of the Rainland house, an exceptional genius and also my half-brother, Del-Lin Rainland. As that thought ended, Del-Lin on the mat dropped his previous nonchalant expression and muttered, "How annoying." Even though the sound was faint, Klein could catch every word and stood stunned, calculating. Thanks to him, the reputation of this prestigious fencing house hasn't been destroyed yet. On the mat, Dalton suddenly tried a dirty move. This time it won't be like before. That made Klein instinctively activate the magic within his body. This is the first time I've seen swordsmanship with my own eyes in this reincarnated body. That helped him clearly see the path of Dalton's sword as it lunged forward. The cold blade kept thrusting straight, but Del-Lin stood frozen, doing absolutely nothing. Just a split second later, he leaped behind Dalton's back. The lightning-fast action made Klein incredibly excited. I can see through it. He stared at Del-Lin's footwork as he leaped, commenting silently. From the stance and the way he pushed off the ground, when Dalton angrily raised his wooden sword to counterattack, this guy had witnessed the use of the Rainland family's secret technique completely coldly, from Del-Lin's movements to the flow of mana. He used the secret meteor sword technique to knock Dalton's wooden sword away instantly. The clear result made the referee quickly shout out loud, "The match is over." The clear result made the referee quickly shout out loud, "The match is over." The witnesses on the high platform quickly revealed their absolute shock. Did you all see that? That was the meteor sword. Unbelievable, he could execute that move perfectly in front of so many people. This is definitely a warning to the branch families. A show of strength to affirm that the Rainland house is still very formidable. Klein, standing in the stands, naturally felt a chill down his spine and had to pull his hair down to cover his face. What was that? Something seems to have just flown into my eye. This is definitely a warning to the branch families. A show of strength to affirm that the Rainland house is still very formidable. Klein, standing in the stands, naturally felt a chill down his spine and had to pull his hair down to cover his face. What was that? Something seems to have just flown into my eye. Don't know when, but Del-Lin had walked up beside Klein to have a quiet conversation between the two. When did you get here? I just arrived. Why didn't you give me a heads up? If I knew my little brother was watching, I would have tried to show off even more. Klein silently commented on Del-Lin in his head. Skilled, handsome, and kind. Truly a perfect person. But why did the branch family people show up again? If they're here to suck more money, then... He was cut off by the head of the house. Well done, Del-Lin, you have mastered our family's technique. Seeing that familiar face, Del-Lin hurriedly rushed past Klein to step in front of him. Father. Let him have some privacy to indulge in his wandering thoughts. This is the current head of the family I was born into, my father. Klein kept listening to Heinkel praising his brother. You must have put in a lot of effort to reach this level. Looking at him talking happily with Del-Lin, he fell silent in thought. To him, Del-Lin's existence is his final pride. Dunkel appeared out of nowhere, offering a few comments typical of an experienced person. This level of mana and precision, knights of his age are far from keeping up. Truly an outstanding innate talent. When Del-Lin shyly expressed humility, I feel a bit embarrassed. Actually, there are still many shortcomings. Heinkel immediately cut him off. Del-Lin, a Rainland knight must always be the greatest knight in the empire. That was the last wish of the first Duke, Berkel Rainland. Keep that in your heart and continue to train. Del-Lin didn't know what to say, so he just bowed gently. Thank you, father. After finished teaching the eldest son, Heinkel immediately turned toward the other one. Klein, having just been named, looked at him anxiously, only to see him slowly move his hand toward him, then speak after a sigh as light as a feather. I still don't feel any mana from you at all. Klein didn't know what the other person's intent was, so he could only say, I'm sorry, father. Then he silently and vaguely guessed the situation. People are only angry and disappointed when they still expect something. Now that all potential is lost, I'm nothing more than a useless burden. Dunkel, standing behind Heinkel, suddenly interjected. Pardon me. Sir, perhaps it is because young Master Klein had to stay in the monastery during his most important years for sword training. The surrounding people also took that opportunity to gossip noisily. Did you hear that? The second young master of the Rainland house doesn't have a lick of mana? He's far worse than his brother. I knew it. The children of the main line are actually just incompetent. Without strength, how can they protect the family? The rumors in the empire are true. That's why our branch has to step up to take charge, right? Heinkel didn't pay attention to those whispers but said to Klein, "It's all right, there are many other paths besides holding a sword." He took all those meaningless words to heart and thought bitterly. I don't care about the insults aimed at me, but Burkle, did you sacrifice your life for people like this? Infinite anger made him clench his fists in frustration. Klein hissed through his teeth in his mind. The Rainland family is nearing its end. Did you sacrifice your life for people like this? A few minutes later, Delin turned to say goodbye to him before leaving with their father. See you later, Klein. When they had just disappeared from the corridor, Dalton quickly let his foul mouth take over. What is this? A Rainland young master who doesn't even know how to use a sword? On top of that, he acts all high and mighty because he's from the main line. He's truly a disgrace to the family. Klein was insulted right in front of the crowd but gently thought to himself. Dalton Cornwell, this guy is also from the Branch family. Then he calmly asked the other person back. I suppose sneaking around flirting with girls behind the ballroom is your pride and joy? How do you know about that? You thought using money to silence people would end the rumors? Are you naive or do you have a problem with your brain? What did you say? When Dalton lunged to hit Klein, he leisurely leaned aside, causing his opponent to trip over his foot. Where did you hear that nonsense? He fell flat on his face. Klein slowly left the suffocating corridor. Just got defeated by Delin, so now you're planning to take it out on me? But he was pulled back by Dalton's vulgar cursing. You son of a bitch, you're just a brat who doesn't even know who his own mother is. Klein quickly revealed a terrifying aura, turning back and gritting his teeth. What did you just say? That image made Dalton so surprised he froze. The other person's vulnerable state made Klein unable to help but mock him in his heart. This has nothing to do with my mother. Someone I haven't even seen the face of, that's just blatant contempt aimed at the mainline from your pathetic sense of pride. Why has everything turned out this bad? Why has the family of the hero who took me down become like this? Dunkel, after seeing Heinkel off, returned to resolve the difficult problem in the hallway. That's enough, Sir Dalton. I won't let you engage in any more disrespectful behavior. That statement made Dalton lose face and grit his teeth in anger. He turned and left, still muttering incessantly. Be grateful that you have a knight to protect you, you coward. Dunkel stood watching Dalton throw a tantrum at the people around him. What are you looking at? Dunkel's hand suddenly squeezed his sword hilt unconsciously. That image immediately caught Klein's eye. After calculating something in his head, he slowly asked the other, Dunkel, do you have any spare swords here? After a long while, the two of them stepped out into the dimly lit garden. Dunkel respectfully handed the sword with both hands to Klein. Here you go, young master. But it's so late, why do you need a sword? As Klein swung the sword, he asked, let's see. Delin swung it like this earlier, right? Dunkel couldn't hide his confusion and asked back, earlier, you mean the meteor sword move? Getting confirmation from him, yes, I have some things to check, you go in first. Dunkel bowed quickly. Yes, please be careful. But his mind was still filled with lingering thoughts. Perhaps he still has some attachment to using a sword. Before leaving, he couldn't help but turn to look at Klein for a moment, but it was too late. Young Master Klein's body has absolutely no mana. A person who can't use mana can never become a knight. Furthermore, what we saw earlier was the meteor sword, a secret move created by the Duke himself. Even if he imitated the sword path perfectly, executing it is impossible. Meanwhile, Klein slowly closed his eyes, took a deep breath to focus his mind. Everything appeared very clearly. What I witnessed earlier, from the footwork to the timing of the stomping. Klein quickly blended into Delin's moment of brilliance. At that moment, the curvature of the blade and the way mana circulated. Thanks to that, he could transform the energy source in his heart in the big sword. Klein's large, round eyes quickly made a slight cracking sound as energy surged out continuously. Everything progressed so quickly that Dunkel, who was leaving, had to stop in his tracks. He looked back in confusion at this flow of aura. A strange image struck his eyes, making Dunkel jump in shock. Could it be? When Klein gently swung the sword into the ground, a soft light flashed in the corner of his eyes. It turned out the energy emitted from the blade had split the large rock in front of him in two. That magical feat left Dunkel stunned for a long time. When he stepped toward Klein in confusion, stuttering, "Young master," the boy excitedly felt his heart pounding. What the hell is this? Did I really succeed? Erin's face turned paler than a leaf, her small mouth blankly uttering an exclamation. What? Garrison also interjected, expressing his disbelief. This is. He stared at Klein's head submerged in water, then his tone suddenly became excited. Unbelievable. The next second, Garrison turned to Aaron, pouring out words as if boasting. Look, he can hold his breath underwater for over a minute now. Aaron naively sang along. Oh, really? Our young master really is a true fish. Garrison contentedly offered a bolder new idea. A fish, huh? Then next time, should we do the purification ritual in a fish tank? Just as he lifted his head, he heard the shocking news that made Klein explode. Fish tank, my ass. Why is it taking so long today? Garrison indifferently confirmed, done. He shouted in anger, done with what? Damn it. It's just that today, I felt a sinister aura radiating from your room. Klein trembled all over, hissing each word of hatred. A sinister aura? You dare to toy with me just because of some nonsense like that? Aaron, not sensing the deadly atmosphere, still naturally stepped up to serve. Young master, here is your towel. Just then, a voice interrupted. Young Master Klein. It turned out to be Dunkel coming in to report with a thin envelope in his hand. Lord Dalton just sent you an invitation. Klein, who was leisurely drying his hair, suddenly looked blank. Who? Dunkel patiently explained. It's Dalton, the one who just sparred with Lord Delin the other day. Unhappy memories flooded Klein's brain, making him furious. That bastard knows how to apologize? But in the end, he patiently read all the tiny letters in the envelope, ignoring Aaron, who was diligently scrubbing the floor. His mind unconsciously sank into suspicion. A hunting competition? After causing trouble at the training ground, now he's sending invitations? How strange. He's definitely using this as an excuse to lure me out. Seeing him so silent, Dunkel asked, Do you intend to participate? Klein replied indifferently, There's no reason to refuse. His gaze glanced toward the sword leaning in the corner, then he spoke with hidden meaning. Besides, I'm holding an ace up my sleeve. Clearly, Klein already had a plan in mind. I have reviewed Dellen's sword moves from the other day many times in my head, and then I realized one thing, any technique, I only need to see it once, and I can imitate it perfectly, even though I don't know why that is. Dunkel, standing nearby, was left speechless by that ambiguous talk, but after a few seconds of silence, he bowed to accept the order out of habit. I understand, I will go prepare the carriage immediately. Garrison, not knowing when he had approached, suddenly chimed in, a hunting competition. Interesting, he shamelessly suggested, how about I go with you for fun? Klein jumped up to object. What the hell are you saying? Who asked you to follow? What crazy game are you planning to pull now? Even so, Garrison only needed one sentence to successfully control him. I already told you. His tone suddenly became serious. For some reason, today I feel something is not right. Regardless of the outcome of the discussion, the carriage procession departed on time. Aaron, usually lively, felt motion sick upon getting into the carriage, lying limply on Garrison's lap. Klein felt itchy watching that, so he threw a pillow over. I told you not to follow. Here, take my pillow and lie down. After doing all that, with his shy nature, he still turned his head to the window and muttered. The western forest terrain is very dangerous. Anyone who goes for the first time will feel tired. Rest a while and you'll feel better. Garrison was moved to tears, suddenly pouring out a dramatic stream of words. Our young master has really grown up, knowing how to care for others. Klein looked at that pretentious act and felt a chill throughout his body, so he tried hard to deny it. It's not for you, give that to Aaron. Do you think I'm crazy? After venting his frustration, Klein continued to let his soul drift to the scenery outside. The scenery before his eyes made his mind drift far into memories. Anyway, this place has changed too much. Even images from the past followed, flooding in. Back when I was here, everywhere was just snow and corpses. I never expected that the eternal ice shelf after 200 years could become this green. Even images from the past followed, flooding in. Back when I was here, everywhere was just snow and corpses. I never expected that the eternal ice shelf after 200 years could become this green. Suddenly, there was the voice of Dunkel outside pulling him back to reality. Young Master Klein, we have arrived. The family mansion. Klein raised his head, taking in all the luxury, then silently marveled. Is this where that Dalton guy lives? Deep down, he felt even more bitter than a jar of vinegar. The mansion before him was even more magnificent than the main house of one of the three great dukes. It was just a hunting competition for the kids. It seemed like this family had way too much money to burn on such things. Just then, a loud shout caught his attention. Dalton, leading his pack of dogs, chimed in with a snide remark. "What are you staring at so intensely?" He didn't even wait for Klein to answer before he brazenly blurted out, "High ceilings, thick walls, pretty sturdy construction, isn't it? It's all thanks to the money we've been siphoning from your main branch, after all. But you've been locked up in that monastery for 7 years, so you probably don't know anything about how the real world works, right?" Despite the annoying noise in his ear, Klein's attention remained focused on the dogs. Seeing the hounds looking so skeletal and wretched, he decided to channel his frustration into a biting retort. "Since when did a hunting competition turn into a gossip session?" Dalton didn't get angry. Instead, he smirked and retorted, "You impatient brat, I was prepared for that, knowing you'd say exactly that." With that, he suddenly released the reins. Watch closely. The starving pack of hounds was unleashed, charging forward with a roar at Dalton's command. "Let's begin." Then, he explained slowly, with a tone of amusement. "I've scattered bait all across the mountainside. The sense of smell of a starving dog is 100,000 times sharper than a human's." While his mouth was busy blathering, Dalton's hands were busy drawing his bowstring taut. As the beasts went wild, driven by the scent of the bait to find food, one dog in the pack suddenly widened its eyes as it caught the scent of death, but all of them were powerless to stop the volley of arrows that pierced through their bodies. Dalton stood with his hands on his hips, laughing uproariously with satisfaction. "See that? A wildly successful hunt." Suddenly, Aaron shuffled over from out of nowhere, speaking in a sleepy voice. Dalton immediately shifted his attention to her. "It's you, isn't it?" Klein's maid, always trailing behind him. He paused for a moment before baring his teeth in a threat. "I don't get what use a little girl like you could be that he keeps you around. Come here, I'll give you a different job." But before Aaron's expression could even change, a hand gripped Dalton's wrist tightly. He turned around, dissatisfied and questioning. "What the hell is this?" Klein's tone was just as frustrated. "Let go immediately." He swept a sharp, cold glance over the man's body and emphasized his point. "Before I break it." Dalton had to strain every muscle to break free from Klein's grip. Humiliated and furious, he gestured aggressively toward him and made an excuse. "Don't try to act all tough." Dalton dashed toward his horse and mounted it smoothly. Then, he grinned widely at the thorn in his side and gestured. "Follow me." Klein didn't hesitate to jump onto the horse next to him. "You heard him, I'll be right back. Just stay here and wait with Aaron, and don't you dare follow me." Dunkel cried out in a panic, "It's too dangerous to go alone." He had just blurted out a suggestion when a magic charm blocked his path. "Let me go with." As soon as he saw what it was, Dunkel had to change his tone immediately. "A magic communication scroll?" It turned out that a communication scroll was a single-use magical paper used to send signals without needing mana. As soon as the paper was torn, the linked imprint would react to transmit the signal. Klein whispered into his ear while still glancing toward Garrison. "That priest, the fact that he followed me all the way here is truly suspicious. If he suddenly disappears, something must have happened." Dunkel lowered his voice to ask as well. "Something happened?" Klein immediately raised the back of his hand to issue an order. "That's right. If you see him disappear, tear the scroll immediately. The imprint on the paper will appear on the back of my hand, that's when I'll know to be on guard." Seeing he had said enough, he threw in one last remark and urged his horse forward. "I'm counting on you." Dunkel hadn't had a chance to reply before he could only helplessly call after him. "Young master." Although they hadn't spoken, the two men's suspicious behavior had been fully noted by Garrison. The sky suddenly darkened as if someone had draped a black curtain over it. Klein tightened his reins while turning it over in his mind. He definitely couldn't have gone far, just following this trail in the woods would lead right to him. Just as he thought of this, his face suddenly stiffened. It turned out that Dalton was sitting there hugging his sword, waiting all this time with a provoking expression. "You've arrived? Klein, isn't it a bit late?" He dismounted leisurely and spat out a tone of impatience. "What kind of game are you trying to play?" But before he could finish his sentence, Klein had to switch to an exclamation. "What the hell?" Before him lay the scattered carcasses of the dogs. Dalton waved his sword in response, filled with glee. This is the most brilliant finale to today's competition. He gnashed his teeth and hissed with malice. And the final prey I'm going to finish off is you, Klein softly confirmed. Kill me? Dalton pointed his sword forward and finished his thought. You got it. I'm going to chop off your head and throw it for the old family head to see. Let me tell him that. As he reached this part, Dalton's tone became shriller. The Rainland family is just a bunch of ridiculous people, a hollow shell with no power or real talent. He waved his hand to signal his lackeys to show themselves and threatened. You won't have a single chance to resist. Dalton was already dreaming of his home and children. After all, the dukedom will soon belong to our branch anyway. The henchmen who came with him followed his lead and raised their bows. Curse the fact that you were born into such a stupid family. While Klein's face remained stone-cold, Dalton's voice kept going. That's right, by tomorrow, the whole world will be buzzing about this. The legendary northern swordsmanship family has fallen, and the young master of Rainland has died a miserable death as bait for the dogs. I don't know what word touched a nerve, but Klein's eyes suddenly widened. Burkel's old words suddenly echoed in his ears. It's truly for the future of the children. The contrast between the past and the present made it hard for Klein to stifle a smirk. After failing to hold it in a few times, he let go and laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. That insane look made Dalton waver slightly. You can still laugh? Have you lost your mind? He was planning to add another sentence, but the laughter stopped. Since that wasn't the case, Klein now used a dark tone to refute him. What a brat who doesn't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is, only good at acting recklessly. This direct slap in the face made Dalton so angry his eyes nearly popped out. Klein didn't stop there but continued to educate him. This family was built with my very life, yet you dare to insult and mock it? Waves of spiritual energy began to swirl around his body, and seeing the birds flying away in a panic, Dalton had to stutter. Magic, but you don't have any mana, do you? Klein was extremely kind in enlightening the intellectually disabled grandson. This isn't ordinary magic. He raised his hand to make everything clearer before emphasizing each word. It's dark magic. The crowd around them was blown away by this power, their eyes stinging, only able to gape and ask each other, "Hey, what's going on? What the hell kind of monster is that guy?" Just then, Dalton's brain was unusually sharp, so he blurted out, "Wait a minute, what? Did he just mention dark magic?" Klein confirmed his suspicion with a spell. I call upon the ancient evil spirits that have been buried under the currents of time. I shall awaken you and bring you back to the light. From this moment on, I command you. Klein raised his hand high and shouted the command. Devour, devour them all. Each word that came out of his mouth carried a powerful, urging force. Hurry, devour, devour everything. Dalton's face went pale, his mouth agape as he screamed. Unbelievable. It can't be? At the same time, Klein's summoning ritual was completed, and until those resentful spirits were not left with a trace, he calmly bestowed death upon the ignorant people in front of him. Devour them all clean. A stream of thought appeared in his mind along with a bright red flash amidst the pitch-black space. Klein thought he had forgotten the pile of skulls that appeared in his mind, carrying an ominous aura that blanketed the entire area. 200 long years had passed, and Klein walked on a path paved with the white bones of the unfortunate souls who had fallen. His hair simultaneously changed from black to silver, but he could clearly feel the desperate hands trying to reach up from the swamp to grasp at the last glimmer of hope. His hair simultaneously changed from black to silver, but he could clearly feel the desperate hands trying to reach up from the swamp to grasp at the last glimmer of hope. That's right, the resonance, the ripples, the afterimages, the memories. Right at this moment, Klein touched that black hand with his own. This familiar feeling of nostalgia. And then, without hesitation, he squeezed and crushed that thing. Seeing the scene before his eyes, Dalton's eyes widened and he shouted. Impossible, could it be that you are? With a gloomy face, he gently reached his hand forward, surrounded by countless monsters with eyes full of killing intent. Dalton's scream echoed throughout the space. Our command, he smirked, his eyes sharp and cold. Indeed, I was once called by that name. The image of a gloomy sky appeared, and sounds of profound sorrow echoed incessantly. One of the three men sweated and stuttered. Archimond, wasn't that just a rumor? Furthermore, what is that thing? Klein, with a cold face, frowned as he looked ahead. At the same time, a skull gently opened its mouth and cried out, white smoke billowing out from it. Dalton and the others witnessed this scene and were involuntarily stunned. Then, all of them pointed with contempt and burst into loud laughter. What the hell is that? Look at those dry bones, acting all dangerous, and in the end, you summoned this trash. Klein heard these words and his voice dropped. Trash, Dalton, with a look of disdain, smirked. Yeah, trash. I've smashed hundreds of skeletons like this while on missions. The man next to him raised an eyebrow in confusion. But why do they look so weird? Are those black things bones? He casually suggested. Whatever, later everyone take a bone home as a souvenir. The others heard this and laughed with amusement. Sounds good. Next, he frowned and ordered. First, deal with those blocking the way. The guy standing next to him at the same time stuck his tongue out and licked his sharp blade. Dalton's serious voice echoed. The rest of you, clear the path. You could only see a few people following the order and pointing their arrows forward. The guy holding the crossbow heard that and squinted. The sharp arrow tip pointed straight at the target, and then Dalton yelled. Fire! As soon as they received the order, they quickly released their hands, and countless arrows flew forward accordingly. The rain of arrows was aimed straight at his position and the dry bones, but Klein didn't react at all, only slightly bowing his head. Next, he lifted his face, his blue pupils carrying a cold, ice-like look as he narrowed them. The sound of countless arrows embedding into the ground echoed throughout the space. Dalton, standing on the opposite side, saw this scene and arrogantly laughed out loud. Poor Klein, he's probably a pile of mush by now. Dalton, standing on the opposite side, saw this scene and arrogantly laughed out loud. Poor Klein, he's probably a pile of mush by now. You could only see a few arrows embedded straight into the black bodies. A whistling wind carrying a heavy atmosphere swept past, and the skeletons with arrows stuck in their bodies stared forward with glowing eyes. Klein stood behind them, narrowed his eyes at the group, and then he curled his lip in contempt. 200 years is quite a long time. It's unexpected that no one recognized these bones. Seeing this bizarre scene, they couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. There hadn't been any of those things in front of them just a moment ago. He raised an eyebrow with a cold face and looked down. If they were ordinary skeletons, I guess you'd think that, and rightly so. The guys were so angry they couldn't help but curse. What the hell is this? Damn it! And then Klein slightly raised an eyebrow and revealed. My skeletons are very different. At the same time, a thought appeared. Look closely, Burkle. Klein's voice echoed accordingly. Defense formation number 1, disengage. Next, he muttered to himself in his head. The future of the North that you protected by killing me, those who mocked and insulted it. At this moment, he curled the corner of his lips and simultaneously ordered in a low voice. All troops, prepare to attack. A line of thought filled with confidence appeared. Watch how they get crushed under my hand. Immediately, those dry bones charged forward powerfully, and besides that, they let out extremely eerie sounds. Dalton looked at this scene and couldn't hide the look of horror on his face. What the hell? Next, he screamed in horror. Even dry bones know how to run? And a large number of dry bones continued to charge toward the guys on this side. He immediately drew his sword and loudly gestured. Don't panic, hold the formation. Those damn skeletons. You could only see one of them getting stabbed straight by the sharp weapon in the hands of the skeletons, blood from his mouth and the wound pouring out accordingly. The entire area immediately sank into complete chaos. The formation on Dalton's side had been broken by those skeletons. Screams echoed throughout the space. When he saw his comrade's blood spurting out incessantly, he put his hand over his face and cursed through gritted teeth. Damn it! Next, Dalton yelled. What are you doing? Hold the front line. At the same time, Klein coldly ordered. Crossbow squad number 2, surround them, lock onto the targets. Immediately, right above their heads, black shadows appeared, preparing to load their crossbows to fire arrows. The image of dry bones with weapons in their hands appeared. Klein's order echoed. Prepare to fire. As soon as they saw this scene, sweat poured down like a stream. It's a long-range attack. Everyone, run! And he only raised his eyes and said in a low voice. Fire! As soon as they heard Klein's order, the skeletons immediately released their hands, and countless sharp arrows shot straight forward. The guys standing below hurried to scatter like bees whose nest had been broken, while those arrows were still aimed straight at them as they rushed forward. Those people suffered the rain of arrows from the skeletons and screamed in agony. The melee skeletons below were also having an overwhelming advantage over Dalton's group. Seeing this scene, he gritted his teeth and thought, "How ridiculous. These aren't the skeletons I know. At this rate, it's only a matter of time before we're wiped out." And then Dalton frowned and loudly suggested, "Everyone put down your crossbows, stop loading, switch to melee." The guys around him probably didn't have the strength to follow, but he still glared and yelled, "Are you listening to me?" Dalton swung his weapon back powerfully. "You damn undead." Next, he slashed straight across the neck of a skeleton, and you could only see its head falling to the ground accordingly. Dalton couldn't hide the look of triumph on his face as he laughed out loud. "It worked, just as I thought, just aim for the head." Right at this moment, the headless skeleton swung its sharp blade. He seemed to sense the danger and immediately crouched to dodge the blow. Dalton was sweating profusely as he gritted his teeth and muttered, "What the hell? I'm sure I cut its head off." At the same time, Klein spoke coldly. "If you cut off their heads, they won't be able to stand up, that's what most people think." On his lips was a meaningful smile, and he continued with a hint of contempt. "But I already said it, my skeletons are very different." The skeleton that had just been decapitated gently reached out to pick up its head. You could only see the skull gradually reconnecting to the neck of that skeleton. This is the biggest reason he was able to sweep across the continent. Dalton, scared, asked himself in his head, "Can it reattach its own head? Spiritual bodies summoned by magic aura aren't that easy to kill." They all obeyed and moved with tactical precision. The bald guy saw this scene and gritted his teeth, cursing, "Damn it, what the hell are these things?" Next, he screamed, "Why do they keep regenerating?" Klein thought with a small smile on his lips. "With this body of mine, 11 is the maximum limit. So, shall we continue?" Everyone who heard this couldn't hide the look of pure horror. You could only hear the piercing screams echoing in the quiet night. Scene changed to the fountain area, where joyful laughter was spreading through the space. Erin's eyes went wide in surprise, her mouth still busy chewing on a piece of cake. "Really? Did young master really do that?" Sitting right next to her, Garison gave a gentle smile. "Of course, and this is a story from back when he was still at the monastery." Hearing that, she couldn't hide her excitement, laughing every time she imagined it, while the man next to her remained silent and observed her. Then Garison smiled meaningfully. "You seem to really like him, Erin?" Erin enjoyed the piece of cake and innocently replied, "Obviously, young master is extremely amazing." Right at this moment, from elsewhere, a desperate, heart-wrenching scream rang out. "Stop it, I beg you," she gently offered a remark. "He is very kind." Contrasting with that statement was the face covered in tears of terror of someone on the brink of death. Erin exclaimed happily and sweetly. Immediately, a skeleton soldier did not hesitate to swing a lethal blow into the back of the person begging. Blood splattered everywhere, but she still enjoyed continuing. "He even shared cookies with me," Erin affirmed with a face full of happiness. "He is the warmest person in the world." Klein coldly glanced at the fresh blood pouring from the enemy's body without a change in expression. The scene of Dalton's group struggling hopelessly with the undead appeared along with the incessant screams. The leader on this side was also struggling to find a way to deal with the moving skeletons. Dalton couldn't suppress his anger, he swung his sword and cursed bitterly, but no matter how many times he hacked them to pieces, they quickly recovered as before. Witnessing that scene, Dalton blared and gritted his teeth. "Those damn skeletons. At the very least, I have to stop them from regenerating." As if he had just realized something essential, he stared at Klein and affirmed inwardly, "That's right, it's him. Just need to take him down." Finishing his train of thought, Dalton used all his strength to move agilely, weaving through the skeletons. He swung the sword in his hand powerfully, aiming straight for his position. The next second, Dalton screamed madly, "Enough with the faking dead. Whether you're undead or not, once you're dead, stay dead." As the sharp blade was about to descend on his head, Klein didn't waver but slowly opened his eyes. His pupils emitted a mysterious purple light, causing countless energy rays to appear simultaneously. Klein stared straight ahead, talking to himself in his heart. "I can see it. With the power of this eye, I can reproduce a skill just by looking at it once." He carried the immense power, swinging his arm back powerfully to counterattack. Witnessing the scene before his eyes, Dalton couldn't help but be terrified to the point of widening his eyes. Is that Dellen's? The secret technique of the Rainland family. With a body as light as air, Klein swung a sharp, decisive slash. He was stunned to see his body cut in half, as if he still couldn't believe the current situation. Just then, Klein lowered his voice. Don't even think about dying peacefully. Dalton arched his back with purple eyes still shining brightly, and he raised an eyebrow, declaring that the judgment began from this moment. The sky suddenly was covered in a gray color. Dark clouds rolled in, making the atmosphere even heavier. Looking down at the results he had just created, Klein gently approved. You're right, Dalton. Looking down at the results he had just created, Klein gently approved. You're right, Dalton. Archimonde's power suddenly erupted powerfully in his body at this moment. A soul master originally manipulated magic aura, but it was unexpected that the thing helping Klein protect himself was the inherent ability of the Rainland family. Burkle's face seemed to have been deeply engraved in his subconscious, so clear that it could not fade. However, above all, it was the enemy's blood that fueled his strength. Klein could only sigh softly. Now that I've been reborn in this body, I can't deny it anymore. A feeling of extreme unease suddenly flashed through Dalton's mind. What? He was so panicked that he could only stutter. What do you mean? Just a few short seconds later, his eyes rolled back because he couldn't take it anymore. The moment his opponent completely collapsed quickly caught Klein's sight. Just keep your eyes open and watch, Burkle. He gritted his teeth and muttered. This fallen family, I will personally revive it. He gritted his teeth and muttered. This fallen family, I will personally revive it. He suspiciously checked his own condition. Along with that feeling, not only was his whole body tightened by ropes until it hurt, but his ankles were locked by shackles, just like a wild beast being held captive. The cold air around him made his large body tremble involuntarily. Ha! Dalton constantly struggled to escape the control. What is this? A familiar voice suddenly echoed amidst the terrifying silence of the space. Are you awake? Klein coldly introduced. This is the place where souls step after leaving the world you once lived in. The underworld created by me. He seemed not to dare to believe what he had just heard. Archimonde's underworld, responding to his panicked face, was his extremely calm attitude. Yes, Klein began to slowly recount each crime that he had committed while alive. You starved and tortured the dogs. The creatures that should have been loved were cruelly and heartbreakingly abused by you. Not only did you not feel regret, but you also viewed it as a pastime and often abused them under the guise of hunting. The realistic memories appearing made Klein unable to stop the rage that was rising. I still remember clearly the look of enjoyment on your face back then. Dalton's self-esteem was bruised, causing him to yell in response immediately. What? If you're going to curse, at least make it sound reasonable. If you don't release me immediately. Suddenly, a horrific thought flashed through his mind. Wait, broken pieces of memory gradually returned like a bitter reminder. Clearly, his body had been severed by Klein's sword. Dalton's face at this time was pale, not a drop of blood left. Then why am I completely intact now? As if reading his opponent's mind, Klein explained. You're dead, Dalton. I'm just returning the karma of your lifetime, because that is the law of this underworld. He tried to suppress the anger that was waiting to explode. Wait. It can't be. Archimonde or whatever underworld, stop talking nonsense and release me immediately. But he still maintained his casual expression as if nothing had happened. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. The important thing was that Klein's voice became lower and full of power. It's time for you to pay for your crimes. Dalton's whole body stiffened at that firm announcement. Just as he finished speaking, the fierce beasts immediately rushed in as if wanting to tear the prey before them to pieces. Listen carefully. Pay the price for the lives you have taken. He emphasized each word. And remember clearly. This place is the hell of your own making. Overwhelmed by fear, Dalton could only scream in a frenzy. It hurts so much. His eyes rolled back as if he had just endured the most horrific nightmare. Finally reaching his limit and completely giving up, Dalton's body lay motionless in the vast, lonely space, exuding a gloominess that sent shivers down one's spine. Klein stood silently, watching the miserable state of the one who had just fallen, his gaze deep and filled with lingering, agonizing emotions. Suddenly, rapid movements behind him jolted him out of his train of thought. Klein turned gently to unleash his ability. That's right, you did as I asked, so I should repay you. A reward for helping me. a violent surge of power suddenly erupted in mid-air. "I will break the curse that binds you and grant you freedom." In a blink, the withered body vanished into thin air as if it had never existed. The sight before him caused Klein to once again fall into heavy contemplation. His lips trembled slightly, then pursed tightly, as if trying to suppress the thoughts he intended to speak. A series of questions flashed through his mind. Death is truly when bones crumble and dissolve into nothingness. But why have I returned like this? What is the purpose? A steady voice suddenly echoed, shattering the quiet atmosphere. "I didn't expect you to know how to use soul-calling magic." How surprising, young Master Klein. He immediately entered a state of extreme alertness. Did he see everything? However, Klein remained calm and coldly asked, "Who are you?" The mage showed no fear, merely revealing a crafty smile. "You don't need to know." Finishing his words, he arrogantly released energy to declare war. "Besides, you won't have the chance to know anyway." The flow of power from him began to transfer into the dried corpses lying motionless on the ground. The eyes of the undead suddenly snapped open as if returned from the dead. The corpses around them quickly gathered into a formidable army. Klein's face darkened the moment he realized the nature of the situation. "That is the resurrection spell that controls dead bodies. That guy, he is a necromancer." Meanwhile, the mage maintained a smug expression. "Dalton might have failed, but these corpses will be useful." His laughter echoed throughout the forest like a terrifying display of power. In another development, Erin was still trying to attract the attention of the person opposite her. "Sir Dunkel, you should come out and listen too. The young master's childhood stories are very funny." However, Dunkel's mind was currently extremely anxious and impatient. "I'll listen later." He looked suspiciously at the magic signal scroll in his hand. Why would the young master carry something only used in emergencies? Negative thoughts constantly appeared in his head. Furthermore, 3 hours had passed since he entered the forest with Dalton and there was still no news. "I have a bad feeling." Finally, he decided to take a gamble. "I can't just sit here. I have to go find him." That decision caused the subordinates around him to fall into a state of extreme panic. "Wait, Sir Dunkel." The soldiers incessantly offered arguments to persuade him, emphasizing that it would be very troublesome if he left his post at this time. They reminded him that the hunting competition was still ongoing and asked him to stay a little longer. Dunkel frowned slightly at the reckless obstruction of those standing before him. He carefully observed the opponent from head to toe to assess the situation. "The Kono family crest, are they Dalton's bodyguards?" This clumsy ruse was quickly discovered by him to have irregularities. Sure enough, they were harboring some shady plot. Dunkel sternly issued a firm warning. "I am the captain of the knights belonging to the Rainland family, and also the young Master's Guard Knight. If you continue to intentionally block my path, I will not show mercy." His gaze was full of murderous intent, like a direct threat to the person in his way. Is that clear? Faced with that power, they dared not move another step. Noticing the atmosphere becoming tense, Erin tentatively spoke up to probe the situation. "Sir Knight, is there something wrong?" Dunkel seriously relayed the urgent news to her. "Listen carefully, Miss Erin, the young master has been gone longer than expected, so I'm going to go find him." Afterward, he did not forget to entrust the mission to the young girl. "So, Miss Erin, please return to the mansion with that priest first." Erin showed confusion upon hearing this request and immediately responded. "But the priest just left." That sentence left Dunkel stunned as if struck by lightning. "What? Without saying a word? Since when?" Meanwhile, she kept her innocent expression to respond. He had an extremely serious look on his face. She tried to recall and tell every important detail that had happened. He said his bad feeling was indeed correct. A shiver suddenly spread throughout Dunkel's body. "That damned priest. The fact that he deliberately followed me all the way here already contained much suspicion." That's right, if that guy disappears, tear the magic scroll immediately. He couldn't help but let out the final instructions, then hurriedly climbed into the saddle. The nagging, anxious thoughts constantly tormented his mind at this moment. Sure enough, everything that happened was not just a simple coincidence. The sound of rapid hooves echoed throughout the space, then gradually disappeared into the thick fog. Something must have happened to the young master. On the other side, Klein was still trying to hold his ground amidst the fierce battle scene. He calmly analyzed and calculated each move as logically as possible. My magic aura was exhausted after the previous battle. Currently, I cannot use the soul-calling spell anymore. The ferocious, roaring sounds constantly reached his ears like an arrogant provocation. He stepped forward to respond. Klein could only helplessly lament his own miserable fate. At this rate, I won't be able to last long. The mage saw him weaken and pushed further. He arrogantly ordered his powerful undead army. Kill young Master Klein for me. He couldn't help but laugh at the somewhat simple and ridiculous thinking of his opponent. Resurrection spell? Do you think you can kill me just because we used the same soul-calling magic? As soon as his words ended, the moon-shaped mark on the back of Klein's hand immediately flashed with brilliant light. The zombies, upon seeing their succulent prey exposed, immediately rushed in like a pack of hungry tigers. Conversely, he still nonchalantly smiled as if he had secured victory. Your time is up, you bastard. The mage's face immediately darkened when witnessing the chaotic scene beyond control. What? The mage's face immediately darkened when witnessing the chaotic scene beyond control. What? The mage's face immediately darkened when witnessing the chaotic scene beyond control. What? He smiled slightly and summoned his familiar, holy technique. Oh, sacred light! The entire space seemed to tremble violently before the terrifying power he unleashed. Please grant rest to the departed. Garrison slowly turned and left a brief message. Rest assured, young master. The unexpected appearance of this uninvited guest left the mage extremely shocked. Who are you? His fierce face now seemed covered by a layer of proud aura representing the majestic holy order. He did not hesitate to answer the opponent's declaration of war. Because I am already here. Garrison Veerman requests to fight. It is rumored that the enforcers are the 3 human weapons who always absolutely obey the Pope. They are the Church's most powerful assets. The only people capable of using the holy relics left behind by St. Gall. People still rumor that each of them carries power equivalent to an entire fortified fortress. Witnessing the horrific sight before him, the mage couldn't help but shudder in fear. He exhausted his remaining strength to fight back against the relentless, storm-like attacks from Garrison. And now, one of those supreme figures was standing tall right in front of him. You are. Even someone like Klein had to feel horrified in front of the one who proudly possessed the greatest physical strength in the world. Garrison smiled brightly to reassure him. Now you can rest easy. Young Master Klein, he stood firmly right in front of him with a firm declaration. Because I am here. Young Master Klein, he stood firmly right in front of him with a firm declaration. Because I am here. They couldn't sense the lurking danger and still recklessly rushed forward to challenge. Each monster's face exuded extreme hatred as if wanting to vent all their resentment on the opponent. However, less than a few seconds later, those faces were completely deformed by Garrison's lightning-fast punch. He gently unleashed fierce and cruel attacks. Tell the sinners. His gaze, from some time ago, had turned fiery red, full of pride. Beg and pray. Each word uttered sounded gentle but was completely contrary to his brutal actions. Then I will grant you baptism by fire. The remaining zombies became even more aggressive after hearing Garrison's words. He stomped hard on the ground as an affirmation of his extraordinary strength, then jumped directly into the air to launch lethal finishing blows. His lightning-fast figure had already neatly dealt with the entire horde of zombies in a flash. This is mercy. Garrison still maintained a calm face amidst the ruin and chaos. And this is judgment. Witnessing that entire majestic and overwhelming scene, the mage was completely stunned with horror. That's crazy. Why are the Church's enforcers here? And what the hell? He seemed unable to believe what was happening right before his eyes. What is that power? In his panic, he hurriedly turned to run to save his life. Damn it, this wasn't in the deal. His legs jumped repeatedly with the thought that being even a second slow would be enough to meet death. That's absurd. Indeed, it was so. When the mage's entire body was suddenly lifted into midair by a mysterious force, Garrison tightened his grip on the opponent's head and coldly interrogated. Where do you think you are going? Not giving the enemy a chance to explain, he directly punished the one who didn't know his place. The mage was so shocked he incessantly screamed desperate pleas. I can't breathe, but he didn't let any plea reach his ears. My prayer hasn't ended yet, so be grateful. Garrison gritted out each word with emphasis, affirming that this judgment was a grace for them. As soon as he finished, he directly crushed the enemy's head on the spot in the name of sacred light. His feet quickly fell toward Klein as a way to seek approval from him. The head, with eyes still twitching, rolled on the ground then stopped right at his feet, making the scene even more gruesome. The head, with eyes still twitching, rolled on the ground then stopped right at his feet, making the scene even more gruesome. Young Master Klein could not help but cast a look full of admiration mixed with trepidation for the person in front of him. Just by him taking one step forward, his face had already paled a few shades, yet just by his mere presence and the pressure from his aura, he carefully observed the cruel traces left behind where more than 20 corpses had been torn to pieces right on the spot. Suddenly, the sky seemed to darken. Under Garrison's large hand, he slowly placed the hand still stained with plasma on Klein's shoulder to probe. I sensed traces of soul-calling magic, so I immediately rushed here. Saying that, he slightly revealed a crafty smile. However, the strange thing was that he didn't hesitate to squeeze the shoulder of the smaller person as a subtle warning. Klein's grayish face became increasingly worse under the overwhelming power from the opponent. This bastard, he completely felt the seriousness and danger of the current problem. He is ready to kill me right here if I show any weakness. Just then, a familiar voice suddenly echoed from afar. Young Master Klein. Dunkel used all his strength to rush straight toward his master to provide timely rescue. Are you okay? Klein was extremely surprised when seeing the familiar figure of the guard knight Dunkel. He tried to keep for himself the last bit of remaining sanity. It seems using the soul-calling spell with his current body is an overexertion for him. It seems using the soul-calling spell with his current body is an overexertion for him. He tried to keep for himself the last bit of remaining sanity. It seems using the soul-calling spell with his current body is an overexertion for him. The bleeding wounds on his body immediately struck his eyes, leaving him shocked. What on earth happened? Why are you covered in blood? Klein could only helplessly speak to comfort his subordinate. I hear you. Stop shouting, help me, my legs have given out. Suddenly, Dunkel remembered an important issue, so he hurriedly inquired. Young master, where is Dalton? However, answering his anxious question was a cold declaration. I killed him, he affirmed without a hint of regret for his decisive action. Because he intended to kill me first. On the other side, Delcan, upon receiving the news, couldn't suppress his anger and slammed his hand on the table. What does this mean? He roared in shock to interrogate the event. Are you saying you tried to assassinate young Master Klein? Not bothering to show any restraint, he flew into a rage and shouted right in the middle of the solemn court session. My son is a knight, he is a man of honor and loyalty. His passing is already a loss too great. Now you still dare to slander him for committing assassination? Delcan completely lost his cool and incessantly offered harsh questions. Shouldn't we focus on finding the real culprit immediately? Conversely, the two of them maintained their professional demeanor to respond to the opponent. However, Sir Delcan, he began to present in detail and seriously the course of events. Despite having to undergo a harsh interrogation for a long time, Klein had not changed his testimony by even a single small detail, and there was still another issue. His eyes fleetingly showed a warning look toward the opponent. There is a record of 2 mercenaries sent from your mansion at the exact time the 2 children went missing. It seems the truth is clearly that Dalton actually had a plot to assassinate. The truth being exposed left Delcan completely speechless. That is, but in his heart, he kept uttering bitter reproaches. These idiots, I told them not to leave any evidence. Even so, he still did not easily accept this defeat. Even so, this is still absurd. Dalton is talented enough to officially join the Knight Order, while young Master Klein hasn't even held a sword correctly, right? The people around immediately started whispering noisily about this absurdity. That's right, I saw him at the sword performance. Sir Dunkel himself said young Master Klein has no magic power, so how could he kill Dalton? He sighed with relief after succeeding in leading public opinion as he wished. Dalton failing is one thing, but if they find out he tried to kill a direct descendant, I'm finished too. Delcan smiled slightly and made a reckless decision. Alright, I will change tactics. Immediately, he deliberately ignited to add fuel to the fire for the debate. Imagine what kind of person young Master Klein is. He laughed loudly with a triumphant tone. He is the son of the Grand Duchess, a woman always surrounded by countless strange rumors until the moment she passed away. Didn't he claim himself to be Archimonde since he was a child? Delkin became increasingly fired up, causing the entire court to fall into extreme chaos. How can you believe the words of such a person to accuse my son of being a murderer? The two ladies heard those words and their anger flared up intensely. Watch your words, Count Delcan. However, he still roared aggressively as if he had secured victory. Everything is too clear. Young Master Klein, because he lacks sword skills, hired people to eliminate Dalton. Now he intends to turn the tables and blame him. How disgusting. A low voice suddenly rang out, cutting off his words decisively. Enough. Delkin's whole body trembled upon recognizing that all too familiar sound. Wait. That voice. He couldn't help but be shocked by the sudden appearance of his rival. Klein slowly stepped into the middle of the court, directly facing the person attacking him. I have been sitting and listening for a while, and you are saying quite a lot of nonsense. Klein began to recount the course of events concisely but with full weight. He hired mercenaries to assassinate me. I only defended myself and eliminated him when a stranger turned them into undead. Priest Garison appeared and supported me. Although trembling, Delcan still tried to puff himself up to refute. Lies. Klein heard this and only slightly smirked. Lies, you say? His deep black eyes suddenly flashed with a fiery red spark full of mockery. But the fact that I am Archimonde is true, right? His face deformed with horror was immediately captured in his sight. I made a vow when I finished Dalton. Klein always reminded himself of the sole ultimate goal. I will personally revive this family. The family built from my death. I won't let it be tainted by vermin. Cold calculations continuously swept through the mind of the young mage. First, I will settle the account with the bastards in the side branch who dared to touch me. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out, tearing through the suffocating atmosphere covering the court. Sorry for being late. Leia stepped into the center of the hall with an extremely proud aura. The captain of the Blue Saint Spear Knight Order was officially present. Klein was slightly surprised when seeing her presence. Leia also attended that sword performance. Why did she appear here? The people around started whispering curiously. Miss Leia, this incident has nothing to do with your family, right? Heinkel calmly offered an explanation. I gave her permission to attend. Dalton once performed missions under her Knight Order. Each of his words implicitly protected the precious guest, affirming that she had every right to be present at today's meeting. Leia glanced around. This sudden action made Klein startle in alertness. The two's eyes unexpectedly met for a moment. She gently offered a proposal. If you don't mind, I want to talk to young Master Klein privately. A series of questions immediately rushed into his head. Why me? Heinkel couldn't find a reason to refuse, so he nodded in agreement. I allow it. But for a fleeting moment, he didn't forget to add a reminder. Go, Klein, don't stay long. Klein's mood became increasingly heavy before this chain of troublesome events. How annoying, why do knights always like doing that? However, immediately after, he suddenly realized this could be a good opportunity. There are only three possibilities that made her call him out privately like that. However, immediately after, he suddenly realized this could be a good opportunity. There are only three possibilities that made her call him out privately like that. Klein stepped out of the room while carefully calculating each next step. No matter what the reason is, it no longer matters. Once there is a clear goal, he doesn't intend to let it slip away. Confident thoughts kept echoing in his head until he stepped outside. Whether it's her or anyone else, I will use them to my advantage. Suddenly, Leia acted decisively, putting Klein in a passive position. She carefully considered each word before deciding to aggressively press him against the wall. Hey, can I touch you? This unexpected situation made Klein's face turn pale. Was she serious? The girl standing before him was Leia, the eldest daughter of the Paul Even family, one of the three Grand Dukedoms with power equal to Rainland, and also a master of spearmanship and captain of the Blue Saint Spear Knight Order. Her achievements had been clearly recognized. During a siege of hideous magic beasts, they all simultaneously rushed to attack. But Leia's gaze didn't waver, even exuding a coldness hard to fathom. A slash tore through space with terrifying speed, leaving the horde of monsters unable to counter. In the campaign to eradicate magic beasts in the western forest, she single-handedly eliminated a series of high-level creatures amidst a dense sea of enemies without suffering any injuries. And now, that same woman was urging him with a tone full of impatience. What are you doing? Hurry up and follow me. Klein hurriedly dismissed all doubts to follow her. Ha! I'm coming right away. But his words hadn't finished before she cut him off unpleasantly. And don't act so close, we aren't even from the same family. The relationship between the two was inherently quite complex. Klein's mother was the Duke's concubine, so officially, Leia was his cousin. At least that's what everyone around still often said. Looking at Leia's back moving forward, Klein had a completely different thought. But she is the first wife's daughter. In terms of bloodline, we don't share any blood, just strangers. While engrossed in analyzing the bloodline issue, Leia suddenly uttered a random sentence that left him bewildered. From now on, this is just my personal curiosity. Klein was about to ask more when he was unexpectedly pushed back hard by her. She pressed her face so close it made him freeze in place. Can I touch you? Klein fell into a state of total disorder. Do what? He tried to ask clearly. What do you mean? Touch me. Instead of giving an answer, Leia grabbed his wrist and pulled him close. Give me your hand first. She began to feel his palm very thoroughly. Soft skin, smooth, without a single callus or scar, looking exactly like a child's hand. Those strange actions made Klein sweat coldly from anxiety. Leia didn't care about his uncomfortable expression but continued the examination. A swordsman, no matter how well trained, might not have calluses, but some areas of the hand muscles will certainly become firm. She searched for traces under the index finger and the inside of the thumb, tendons which were inherently things that never lie. Finally, she concluded firmly. You have never used a sword, right? Because of this, her suspicion of Klein became even greater. Just looking at the hands is enough to understand, there are absolutely no traces of long-term sword practice. But how could a person like him have the ability to defeat Dalton and two mercenaries to survive? Could it be he used another type of power? Klein couldn't endure any longer. He pushed her away forcefully. On his face now there was no more bewildered look, instead, it was a tone full of questioning. I didn't expect you to say such absurd things. She also wants to ask if I am or am not, doesn't she? In his heart, he raised his alertness to the highest level. This girl is truly extremely dangerous. He intently observed each change in her facial expression. This is certainly not mere curiosity. That gaze is clearly probing my reaction. Silence means admitting, and hesitation is also confirming. Then the simplest answer is. Klein's gaze became unusually sharp, his lips slightly curling into a sarcastic smile. So what? What if I am? Leia heard that and couldn't help but smirk contemptuously. How could that be? A brat like you is Archimonde? His face became increasingly ugly, eyes widened with astonishment. Even though he heard every word clearly, Klein still tried to reassure himself. Wait, you meant to say another word, not brat, right? Leia didn't even care about his graying face, continuing to throw out words as sharp as a whip. You are too small, your proportions are bad, your voice and demeanor have no charisma. In short, you are just a brat. Klein was struck repeatedly to the point his body trembled. This emotional wound was truly too heavy. The more she spoke, the more she reinforced her own stubborn thinking. You are neither Archimonde nor a swordsman. If someone like you defeated a knight, I would give you this kiss. Klein felt like his brain was about to burn, unable to digest this chaotic pile of information. Why is she acting like that? What is her goal? His brain was operating at full capacity to analyze the situation. Is this a political ploy or simply a form of bribery? Leia didn't know the boy in front of her had been scared to the point of being confused about life. She nonchalantly turned to leave, as if nothing had happened. We're going to be late, let's go inside. She stood looking toward the distant sky. Leia's gaze now carried something strange, making it hard for one to fathom her true emotions. As soon as the two returned to the hall, a loud announcement rang out. Young Master Klein and Miss Leia have returned. Before sitting down, Klein's mind once again fell into a chaotic state. All right, I admit I was too subjective. I am the troublesome second son, the one imprisoned for 7 years in the monastery. The fact that they don't believe I killed Dalton in self-defense is also understandable. Delcan, seeing him appear again, started to sweat profusely. Young Master Klein, the calmness here might only be twofold. He didn't beat around the bush but went straight to the main issue. So can I ask what you two talked about? Leia appeared slightly hesitant at this question. Well, Klein didn't say a word. He drew the sword hanging at his side, then slammed the hilt hard on the ground, creating a sound that shook the entire hall. Everyone simultaneously jumped up in panic, even Leia and Dunkel couldn't help but be surprised. He pointed the sword straight at his opponent, calling the guy's name without any restraint. Del Can. Simultaneously, in his heart, Klein had made his final determination. I just need to prove it myself. From his gaze exuded a steadfast determination that nothing could shake. Stop stalling, let's settle this like northern men. Before the witness of everyone present, Klein declared decisively. Let's face off with a duel. Delcan couldn't sit still any longer. He jumped up and shouted loudly. What did you just say? A duel? A duel is an ancient method of judgment in the North, usually used when a final verdict cannot be reached. There are no limits on weapons or skills, the result of the duel will determine everything. Simply put, it is a battle where the winner takes all. Contrary to Klein's overwhelming composure, Delcan looked visibly anxious. A duel? This is all too sudden. Klein didn't bother waiting for him to collect himself, as he had already calculated everything. I have plenty of reasons. Count Delcan started listing his own actions without batting an eye. Even with clear evidence that his son had intended to murder me first, he twisted the truth to shift the blame onto me. I still clearly remember every word he spat out that day. Born from a Grand Duchess surrounded by bizarre rumors during her lifetime, didn't he call himself an Archimon since he was a child? Klein didn't even furrow his brow, his gaze cold as ice, locked onto the Count. In those words, he had insulted both me and my mother. Of course, only half of those things were true. He bore the name Klein, but his true essence was Archimond. He didn't have any special feelings for the mother in this life anyway. He bore the name Klein, but his true essence was Archimond. He didn't have any special feelings for the mother in this life anyway. Klein had already anticipated what he was going to say, so he cut him off immediately. Make a decision, Count. How much longer do you intend to keep everyone waiting? The people watching from above, finding the drama not intense enough yet, began to huddle and whisper. It's been a long time since we've had a duel. I'm really looking forward to it. Heinkel also agreed with the suggestion. If that is the tradition from the first generation, we have no reason to ignore it. I, the 7th Duke of Rainland, guarantee that everything will be decided entirely by the result of this duel. Hearing this, Delcan was stunned into silence. Wait a minute. If all the evidence is neutralized, that means... He turned to look at Klein, his eyes slowly filling with cunning schemes. This was a good opportunity. But on the surface, he still feigned concern. Will you be all right? I heard that the young master has no mana, so I was planning to appoint another knight to step in and fight for you. His tongue was slick, but deep down, Delcan had no intention of leaving him a way out. I will have you killed immediately. The brat Klein wasn't someone easy to deal with either. He immediately responded with full confidence. It's fine, you just watch carefully and see how I dealt with Dalton. Even in his thoughts, he was filled with cold, murderous intent. Go to hell. Seeing his arrogant attitude, Delcan stopped hesitating and immediately agreed. Very well, I accept this proposal. The duel will officially take place within the next 4 days. Yet, no one knew that from this very moment, Klein had already mapped out the most perfect plan for himself. I'm not raising the stakes unreasonably. This is just the beginning. Using you as a stepping stone, I will show the parasites in the Branch family exactly who I am and how I will reform this entire house. As time passed, suddenly a startled cry echoed throughout the castle. Absolutely not. Del Lin couldn't fathom what his younger brother was thinking at this moment. A duel? Are you crazy? Klein, do you really know what you are saying? You could lose your life. He had to listen to his brother talk so much that his ears felt clogged. Klein let out a weary sigh. I know, I already know. How many times do I have to repeat this? His tone was light as air. Father has already agreed, you should accept the truth. Del Lin still couldn't believe what he had just heard. Father has. He was extremely worried about his half-brother. It's okay, It's okay, the duel allows for a representative, I can completely step in and fight for you. However, once Klein had decided, nothing could change his mind. There is no need, I appreciate your kindness, but I don't think this idea is good at all. After all, the reason we can rule the North, no matter how much the Branch family stirs up trouble, is because we have father, the strongest warrior, and you, the future successor. Yet, you want to participate in the duel for me now? Wake up. Klein seemed to have seen through the intentions of that group a long time ago. Doing that would only provide a legal opportunity for them to kill the successor of Rainland. He completely understood Dellen's current feelings. He must be very frustrated because, despite being the designated successor, he couldn't do anything to help his younger brother. But this time, it is I who needs to change my own reputation. For the future, Klein had to seize this golden opportunity. I have no reason to hand this over to you. Seeing the look of determination on his younger brother's face, memories of the past suddenly came back to Dellin. When you were just born, I was so happy that I ran right over to see you. That was the first time I saw. Dellin looked at the tiny child lying there, his sparkling eyes making him unable to hold back his widening, happy gaze. A little angel. He never cared about blood ties, even if they had different mothers, it didn't matter. I once lost you to the Holy Order and had to wait 7 long years to bring you back. And now, it all ends with a duel? Before he could fully grasp everything Dellin wanted to convey, his brother's hand suddenly rested on his shoulder with enough force that Klein couldn't help but be dazed. The heir of the House of Rainland, yet here he was, shedding tears in front of his younger brother. Listen to me carefully, Klein. He couldn't help but be startled. Is he crying? But why? Dellin choked up, wanting to say he would protect him. But before the words could fully escape, Dunkel pushed the door open, cutting off the conversation. Young Master Klein, realizing the situation seemed dire, even as the commander of the knights, he felt helpless. I apologize for interrupting the two of you, but Count Delcan has finished selecting his representative. A flicker of curiosity appeared in Klein's expression regarding this information. Who is it? Dunkel's face immediately became extremely serious. His name is Randall, a knight who was exiled by the Empire and was once extremely famous throughout the battlefields. After receiving information about his opponent, images of him flashed in Klein's mind as if he were standing in some tavern. The real reason he was exiled was his own uncontrollable bloodthirst. Dunkel's deep voice continued to echo in the room. Most prominent among those memories was a brawny man sitting in a room strewn with corpses. He drained the glass of wine in his hand, then glanced toward Klein with a look of utter contempt, as if looking at a tiny ant he could crush at any moment. Young Master of Rainland, it's been a long time since I heard the tragic screams of a little brat. Little brat. Facing Randall's arrogant mockery, Klein felt absolutely no emotion. Not even the slightest flicker of fear appeared in the young mage's steady eyes. Just then, Delcan stepped toward Klein, carefully carrying a sword wrapped tightly in cloth. His voice was serious as he handed it over. This is the sword you requested. I have forged it exactly according to your wishes, but please be careful. The moment it touches a sword imbued with mana, it will shatter instantly. Klein quietly took the sword and gazed at it for a moment before responding without hesitation. Good. Then let's get going. At the same time, excitement had spread throughout the entire arena. Everyone present was talking about the same thing, that Klein had finally decided to appear in person. The atmosphere was boiling with countless eyes fixed on the battlefield, waiting. Delcan looked over at Klein's father and said with poorly concealed astonishment, I thought you truly wouldn't show up. Then he turned back with a thin smile. But are you really okay with this? My fighter is a knight from the Empire. I'm afraid your son without mana won't be able to match him. It's not too late to have the Lord step up instead. Yet, Klein's father had no reaction to those words. His face remained calm and composed, as if he had made his decision long ago. Meanwhile, below the arena, Klein continued to walk, his eyes darting around while thoughts raced through his head. Where is my opponent? Hasn't he appeared yet? But at the very next moment, a giant shadow suddenly fell over him. A man with a monster-like physique stepped in front of him. His body was as solid as steel, and his muscles rippled under his clothes like a true warrior born to fight. He slowly placed a heavy hand on Klein's head and looked down with a threatening grin. So you are young Master Klein. At this moment, the identity of the terrifying person standing before him was revealed. This was Delcan's fighter, Randall. He looked down at Klein with a savage grin on his face and scoffed. You're younger than I heard. That's fine, your arms are so slender. His eyes narrowed dangerously as he leaned in closer. I wonder what kind of sound you'll make when that neck snaps. The moment he understood what was happening, he lunged backward with terrifying speed, creating distance between the two in a single motion. That sudden reaction stunned the entire stands. Immediately, whispers spread across the arena. What just happened? Did he just jump back? In the stands, that guy once again looked toward Klein and said with amusement. Did you see that? The match hasn't even started and he's already like that. Can he really handle a fight with Randall? In the stands, that guy once again looked toward Klein and said with amusement. Did you see that? The match hasn't even started and he's already like that. Can he really handle a fight with Randall? Yet Klein, who was looking at him vigilantly, was thinking of something completely different. That's not it. Damn it, that guy really startled me. It reminds me of the time that priest grabbed my shoulder last time. I backed away without realizing it. That useless piece of junk was no help until the end. At the same time, from above the arena, Captain Leia was quietly observing everything unfolding below. Her sharp eyes didn't leave Klein as the atmosphere grew increasingly heavy. Just then, one of the guards hurriedly approached her and said worriedly, Captain, if Lady Hellion finds out about this, she will be furious. We should head back. Yet Leia immediately replied without bothering to look at him. I don't care, that woman is not my mother. Then, deep in her heart, a different thought arose. If he truly manages to defeat that knight, I will gift him my lips. Even so, her eyes remained fixed on the arena below. She added softly. There is also something I need to confirm. Meanwhile, below the arena, Klein stood there, feeling the weight of everyone's gazes bearing down on him. Shame crept across his face as he thought to himself, how embarrassing. He started to stammer clumsily while trying to straighten his back. Actually, I've had a really bad neck ache lately. Klein straightened up and said in a voice that was clearly irritated. So, you'd better not touch my shoulder. Yet, despite being warned, Randall slowly reached out as if deliberately provoking him. Seeing that, Klein's expression turned sour, and he immediately fired back. I told you not to touch me, you pervert. Are your ears stuffed with muscle too? That's right, that's exactly why the Empire dumped you. In an instant, the entire arena fell into complete silence, then Randall's face slowly broke into a crazed grin. Excellent, the sharper your mouth is, the more you will have to scream with it later. The moment those words left his mouth, Randall lunged and threw a devastating punch forward. His giant fist tore through the air with beastly power, enough to crush a normal person in an instant. But at that exact moment, Klein calmly removed his coat, and the next second, Randall's fist smashed into the ground, creating a violent explosion that caused the stone to shatter and scatter. Dust and debris flew into the air, and cracks ran across the floor of the arena. But Randall's eyes widened in shock as he looked at his hand. The only thing he had caught was Klein's coat, while the boy himself had vanished from that spot before the attack could make contact. The crowd immediately erupted into chaos. The ground shattered. What kind of power is that? Wait, look over there. Everyone quickly turned to the opposite side of the arena, where Klein was standing at a greater distance with a short sword in his hand. His expression remained tense while his eyes carefully observed Randall. In his head, he analyzed coldly, that guy has a really dirty temper. A direct confrontation will be difficult, as I expected. If I take even one hit from that giant frame, I'll be the one blown away. I hate to admit it, but this isn't a situation where I can afford to be careless. Meanwhile, anxious whispers continued to spread among the audience as they witnessed the overwhelming power gap between the two. He dodged that quite well, but how can he bring down a monster like that? A man nearby swallowed hard and said in astonishment. Just a graze from that hit would be enough to break his bones. Some spectators were still whispering among themselves. He's walking straight to his death. Klein had said earlier, you will step in for me in the duel? That only gives them a legal reason to kill the heir of the house. Those words echoed in his mind, making him think quietly. You're right. The fate of the entire family is at stake here, so I cannot act impulsively. But before that thought could fully settle, the battle on the other side of the arena exploded. Randall suddenly lunged forward with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them in a flash. Klein immediately drew his sword and attacked, but Randall casually blocked the blade with his bare hand. The power behind that move stunned all the viewers. Immediately after, Randall countered, sending Klein skidding backward. But he didn't give him even a second to regain his footing, moving with overwhelming speed to appear right in front of Klein and continue his relentless assault. While attacking, Randall mocked. "Do you think just dodging is enough to win?" Klein used all his strength to block the descending attacks. Each strike felt heavier than the last, constantly pushing him further back. Randall kept on mocking. "Why don't you try using death magic? Aren't you the great Archimond?" The moment Randall looked directly into Klein's eyes, he noticed something strange. Klein was smiling. It wasn't a confident smile or a happy one, but the kind of smile that carried annoyance and suppressed rage. After witnessing that terrifying pressure, even Randall instinctively backed away out of fear. Sweat began to run down his face as his body reacted before his mind could understand what had happened. The confidence and arrogance he had shown from the beginning started to crack. Among the stands, confused whispers spread immediately. What did Randall just dodge? No way, he must be going easy on his opponent. Inside his head, he was struggling to understand what had just happened. What was that just now? Clearly, there was nothing there, but even though Klein did nothing visible, he could still feel a fierce, deathly aura emanating from within the boy. This wasn't something he could see with the naked eye, yet his instincts were screaming at him to get away. That invisible pressure alone was enough to make fear crawl over his entire body. Seeing Randall suddenly back away like that, Delcan, sitting high up, angrily tapped his chair and barked. "What's going on? Why is Randall acting like that?" Just then, Klein calmly stepped forward and spoke clearly in front of everyone present. "Don't worry, I won't use any death magic, because I am of Rainland. This is a place to prove myself entirely with the sword." He paused for a moment, then continued in a steady voice. "Therefore, I will not use death magic to kill you." The moment those words were spoken, astonishment spread across the entire arena. His father, his friend, and almost all the spectators stared at him in surprise. But when hearing those words directly from Klein, the atmosphere began to change completely. The crowd's perspective slowly shifted, and one by one, they started cheering for him. "That's right, this is a real challenge. We support you." The arena, which had been filled with doubt and ridicule, was now gradually being taken over by excited shouts and cheers. All because of Klein's unwavering declaration. Randall continued to load more mana into his sword. The energy around the blade became sharper and heavier as he prepared for another wave of attacks. Looking straight into Klein's eyes, he muttered confidently, "That brat has no mana at all. Why is the Empire's swordsmanship feared across the realm? The true power of Imperial swordsmanship lies in never holding back one's mana." Randall concentrated all his power into a devastating attack and lunged forward with terrifying speed. His entire focus was directed at ending the match with a single strike. But at that exact moment, Klein calmly dodged while observing Randall's movements, then softly uttered, "I see it all clearly." His technique, the amount of mana, even the trajectory of the blade, everything, not a single detail missing. To Klein, Randall's attack now looked painfully clear, like a damn fly. Hearing those words only fueled Randall's rage further. Once again, he poured all his strength into another attack, this time much stronger than the last. The power behind it was nearly double the previous one. The moment the attack descended, a huge explosion erupted across the arena. Dust and mist spread in all directions, swallowing the battlefield and blocking everyone's view. The audience could barely see anything through the thick cloud of dust created by that collision. Randall's eyes widened in confusion. Did he really read my entire sword trajectory in such a short time? Then suddenly, from behind him, Klein appeared. Moving through the smoke without a sound, he stepped straight into Randall's blind spot and prepared a counterattack. With such a large frame, your back is completely wide open. The next moment, Klein made his move. The perfect timing, the accuracy, and the smoothness of his technique were so impressive that every viewer stood still in awe. Even the veteran warriors in the arena could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, inside Randall's mind, he was sinking into complete chaos. This is impossible. This bastard, he doesn't have any mana, so how the hell did he? No way, one of the soldiers standing next to Leia said in astonishment. Captain, did you just see that? Leia herself had a light pink flush on her cheeks as she watched Klein's match, clearly influenced by the mastery and overwhelming confidence he was showing everyone. The scene shifts to another place, where a heavy, silent atmosphere blankets the room. Usually, I would have had to intervene myself. Delkin hurriedly spoke up. My lord, that But his words were cut off by the head of the family. I know. I shouldn't act on personal feelings. If I step in now, the reputation of the House of Rainland will only fall even lower. His face darkened as he continued. But the opponent is a knight from the Empire. Klein has absolutely no chance of winning. Delkin looked worried after hearing that, then carefully asked. Then why did you allow this challenge? For a moment, the family head fell silent as if bearing many years of regret in his heart. Then he finally spoke. He stepped out to protect the honor of his late mother. Even when he was framed as an archimand and imprisoned in a monastery for 7 years, I couldn't save him. So what right do I have to stop him now? The atmosphere became heavier than ever. He continued in bitterness. In the end, I couldn't protect anything, not my child, not my family. Hearing those painful words, Delkin immediately tried to reassure him. You don't need to worry, my lord. The young master doesn't fight battles he will lose. Immediately after, the scene returns to the current battlefield. The challenge was still ongoing, but even Klein's father couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes after witnessing what was unfolding before him. The House of Rainland is known as the Northern Swordsmanship family. To survive in the ruthless, freezing lands of the north, they developed a swordsmanship style that minimizes mana consumption to the absolute minimum. Each movement is refined for maximum efficiency, preserving strength and mana so they can endure prolonged battles on the harsh ice fields. On the other hand, Imperial swordsmanship is completely different. Imperial swordsmanship is predation. This is a style built entirely around overwhelming the opponent by releasing a massive amount of mana at once and crushing them before they can react. Conversely, Rainland swordsmanship pursues a completely different philosophy. That is the true essence of the Rainland family technique. The ultimate swordsmanship achieving maximum efficiency with minimum mana. As that realization spread across the battlefield, Klein calmly spoke up while facing Randall directly. This is how I, a person with no mana, can still execute my family's technique. It may lack raw power, but it is more than enough to defeat someone like you. The moment those words reached his ears, Randall's face twisted in anger. Veins bulged across his face as he glared madly at Klein. You arrogant little rat. At the same time, a massive amount of power suddenly began to gather all over Randall's body. Mana boiled violently around him, becoming thicker and heavier with each passing second. Clearly, he was preparing to release his entire store of mana in a single devastating attack. From above, the men watching the challenge realized the change immediately. Delkin's eyes widened as he thought to himself, it's here. Randall's secret ultimate technique. A mana burst that instantly blocks the opponent's movement. The pressure on the battlefield continuously increased, and the air itself felt heavier as Randall's power continued to climb higher and higher. Then with a furious roar, Randall screamed, "Don't make me laugh, you bastard. The winner will be me." The very next moment, he burst forward with terrifying speed, closing the distance between himself and Klein almost instantly. His attack descended with monster-like power enough to crush his opponent in a single strike. But at the final moment, Klein's body reacted. He brought his sword up just in time and blocked Randall's mana-filled attack head-on. But there was one thing everyone still remembered clearly about that sword. The warning had been given right at the start of the challenge. The moment it touched a mana-imbued sword, it would shatter instantly. And just as predicted, the moment he blocked Randall's mana-filled attack, cracks spread across the blade before it shattered completely. Fragments of the broken sword flew through the air. Seeing that, Randall immediately grinned triumphantly, "Serves you right. With this, your sword is..." But before he could finish his sentence, Klein suddenly smiled. "That's right, now it's finally complete. The weapon to hunt you down." For a moment, Randall didn't understand what he meant, and then it happened. Klein lunged forward in a split second. Instead of considering the broken sword useless, he used the jagged blade as a short-range weapon designed for close-quarters combat. Klein stepped right into his attack range and slashed at point-blank distance. A sharp flash lit up the battlefield. Randall's arm was severed in the blink of an eye, blood sprayed everywhere, and Randall's face twisted in complete horror and agony. Right at that moment, someone loudly declared that the challenge was over. Those watching the match stared at the battlefield in amazement. Dunkel also thought in surprise, just as the young master said, Rainland swordsmanship can be performed with minimal mana, but that should only be possible for an experienced knight. Yet he performed everything perfectly, from the footwork to the trajectory of the sword. And above all, he intentionally baited his opponent to break his sword so he could attack from close range. No matter how you look at it, this is the young master's perfect victory. On the battlefield, Randall continued to scream wildly in pain after losing his arm. He let out a terrifying howl and fell backward. Immediately, a group of healers rushed toward him in a panic. "Hurry up and stop the bleeding. Quickly, hold his arm down and use hypnotic magic." The whole area descended into chaos as the healers desperately tried to stabilize his condition. Meanwhile, Klein calmly observed the scene before him and asked, "Can that be reattached?" The healers quickly replied, "No, sir. With basic healing magic, we will have to prepare a prosthetic arm." Hearing that answer, Klein simply responded, "Really? Just that?" At the same time, deep in his heart, he thought quietly, even after 200 years, healing magic hasn't progressed much. Then, from the other side, his father called him over with a serious expression. "Klein, do you feel nothing when you see an arm being severed?" The moment he heard those words, Klein's expression shifted slightly. He reminded himself inwardly, "That's right, I'm not an Archimand anymore. Should I pretend to be scared now?" Right at that moment, the true mastermind behind the entire incident finally stepped out. His face was full of confusion and anger as he shouted, "This is absurd. Randall lost? Do you know how much money I spent to hire that knight?" Before he could continue losing his mind, Klein's father suddenly spoke up from behind in a cold, authoritative voice. "Count Delcan, as agreed, admit your sins and meet the winner's demands." Count Delcan's face twisted in desperation and disappointment. "Never. I've lost my son and my exclusive knight. How can I?" But before he could finish his sentence, something horrific happened. In an instant, it looked as if his head had been cleanly sliced from his neck. Death seemed to arrive instantly. Then the scene focused on Klein's cold, emotionless eyes as he stared straight at him, Delcan Conwell. The next moment revealed the truth: Delcan was still alive. His head wasn't actually severed, it was just an illusion. His whole body trembled violently as he frantically touched his neck, unable to understand what had just happened. It was just an illusion created by the terrifying pressure of Klein's power. Panic exploded in his mind. What was that? My neck was definitely. Sweat poured down his face like water as fear took complete hold of him. Klein then stood tall before him and spoke. "As the winner of this challenge, I order you, confess your sins before the Master of the North and kneel to beg for forgiveness." His voice became heavier, almost as if death itself was speaking through him. "Bow your head and beg for mercy, for you will be crushed under the weight of your sins and must repent." The moment those words penetrated Delcan's ears, true terror took hold of him. He could almost see death standing right above his head. His entire body trembled uncontrollably, cold sweat dripped continuously, and even breathing became difficult. Unable to resist any longer, he finally collapsed completely. "I was wrong. My son and I dared to attempt to harm young Master Klein." This was a voice used to summon the souls of the departed. The voice of the dead. This was an exclusive soul-disturbing technique of necromancers, a terrifying power capable of inflicting extreme horror in the minds of the living. Delcan collapsed completely. He trembled uncontrollably, knelt down, and bowed his head deeply while begging for forgiveness. "Furthermore, I insulted the young master's mother, the Grand Duchess. Please forgive me." Those witnessing the scene could hardly believe what they were seeing. A spectator stared in complete amazement and muttered, "Am I really seeing this? To let a pillar of a branch family collapse like that." Meanwhile, Klein slowly raised the shattered sword toward the sky. Even though the blade was broken, the pressure surrounding him felt heavier than before. "All those standing here, listen carefully to the declaration of my existence." The atmosphere immediately fell completely silent. "To reform this family, I am the one who entered this challenge and is its rightful winner." His eyes remained perfectly steady as he continued. "The son of Grand Duchess Claudilas and the second son of the North's strongest knight, Heinkel Rainland." Then with pride, he declared his name before everyone present. "I am Klein Rainland." After that powerful declaration, the scene shifted to an entirely different location. The atmosphere here was quiet and heavy, almost sacred. A man could be seen walking into a quiet room while a priest nearby was praying softly. "We will go to the place where his light does not shine. Even if the road is dangerous, even if there is pain, please watch over our intentions. Oh, God of light." Right at that moment, the man who had just entered stepped forward and spoke. "Cardinal Morak." The priest turned around. What is it, Garrison? Your voice sounds heavy. Garrison's expression remained serious as he answered immediately. Our surveillance target has been attacked. The attackers were a necromancer and his undead. For a short moment, silence covered the room. Garrison added in a firm voice, I need to verify this. I need to verify it myself. But Cardinal Murak showed no sign of worry. Instead, he calmly replied, there is no need to worry about that. It is all part of the plan. It is a mission coordinated with the Empire. Garrison's eyes narrowed slightly. Cardinal Murak continued as if explaining something perfectly reasonable. A necromancer is a natural existence that arouses fear. Those stirred by their appearance will inevitably find their way to God. Countless people will flock to our holy order. Then his voice turned colder. Understand this, Garrison. If we can revive the holy order and spread God's will with just a small number of sacrificial lambs, then. But before he could finish his sentence, Garrison suddenly acted. In an instant, he grabbed Cardinal Murak's neck with terrifying force. His eyes burned with rage as he gritted his teeth. A servant of the cathedral involved in petty politics and dealing with heretics. Immediately after, with brute strength alone, Garrison crushed the cardinal's head completely. Blood sprayed everywhere as the corpse fell to the floor lifeless. Right after, another voice suddenly echoed in the area. Do you feel better now? That man walked slowly through the blood-soaked room and looked straight at Garrison before speaking in a calm tone. You haven't changed at all, Garrison Veerman. It's hard to believe you've killed more priests than the necromancers have. A thin smile appeared on his face as he continued. The people of the Holy Order really should know what you are hiding inside that stomach of yours. The identity of the man standing there was the Archbishop of the Palamon Holy Order. Garrison stared coldly at him after hearing those words. Was this your doing? Palamon simply replied without hesitation. Of course not. I only approved it. Then his expression became more serious. And furthermore, I have brought some information regarding your surveillance target. The moment those words were spoken, Garrison immediately attacked him. His fist shot out with force enough to kill a normal person instantly, but Palamon's speed was far beyond normal. Before Garrison could realize what had happened, Palamon had vanished from before him and appeared elsewhere, dodging the attack with ease. Then Palamon continued calmly as if nothing had happened. When necromancy is used, it inevitably leaves traces. He held up an object in the shape of a strange cross while explaining. This is the cross that contains those traces. It belonged to the necromancer you killed. Garrison's expression hardened as he listened carefully. Palamon continued. One of those traces belongs to soul resurrection magic, a type of necromancy used to summon corpses, which the Empire is actively researching. Then his voice lowered slightly. But the other trace is different. It is more similar to the primitive form of necromancy, soul manipulation, not corpse manipulation. Garrison immediately reacted to those words. The primitive form of necromancy. That's right, Palamon replied calmly, the atmosphere suddenly becoming much heavier. He continued. It means there were two necromancers present at the scene. Palamon looked straight into Garrison's eyes and spoke slowly to ensure each word carried enough weight. Listen carefully, Garrison. Your surveillance target, the second son of the Rainland family, is a soulbinder. The scene shifted to a violent, stormy night. Outside, thunder and lightning were tearing everything apart. Inside a cave, the sound of a mining drill echoed incessantly. A miner was diligently doing his work. Every knock echoed throughout the dark cave. He wiped away the sweat, but something had just appeared behind his back. The man immediately turned around in a panic. But the only things left were the tragic screams echoing from deep down in the mine. Returning to Klein's office, Erin was holding the doll she had just finished making. Disaster. I accidentally made a doll with the young master's face. She burst into laughter with delight. Aha, it looks exactly like the young master. Defeating Randall, the challenge representative using the family's secret art, then successfully obtaining a confession from Count Delkin using the skill of the dead's voice, and publicly announcing his existence before the divided factions. I thought I would finally be recognized by everyone, but the real problem is that this 15-year-old body doesn't have enough stamina to keep up. Klein's face tightened. If you're done playing, go back to your room and sleep, Erin responded sulkily. Oof. The young master is so mean, you always play by yourself. What playing? Don't you see I'm reading? It's just a novel anyway, so basically you're playing, aren't you? Hearing that, Klein was speechless. Well, on the outside it looks like a normal novel, but on the inside, it's full of my secret notes on anatomy, magic circuits, and formations. It's all about necromancy. He slowly lifted his teacup and thought. With my current body, I can only summon a maximum of 11 skeletons. My control is stable, but I lack the numbers for a war of attrition. I need to research more about this. The biggest problem is that damn priest. He looks ready to exterminate anyone who uses necromancy. He's already suspicious of me, so I must find a way to regain my original power before he comes looking for me. But how can I do that without being discovered by others? A moment later, at the head of the family's office, he slowly picked up a notice. We have received reports of seeing this in the mining area. They are often called undead, that's it. Without hesitation, Klein clearly replied. I will go. Actual combat is the best way to research. The family head's eyes narrowed in warning. I heard there have been reports of casualties. Will you be alright? It won't be a problem. After the challenge, even Heinkel had recognized him. Furthermore, if it were the undead, it must be related to the one who attacked him before. This is an opportunity where I can freely use necromancy alone. But before he could celebrate for long, a face appeared, breaking Klein's dream. The Duke has ordered me to follow and escort you to ensure your safety. Young master, he sighed in despair. I should have known. At least the night sky looks great while on duty. Klein handed a skewer of meat to Dunkel and said, eat this while it's hot. Oh, thank you, sir. Dunkel smiled. Well, young master, I should do something too. Klein, who was sitting skewering the meat, also paused when he heard that. Don't you see that lump of charcoal? Just sitting still is helping me already. Haha, I'm sorry. During this mission, I realized a surprising truth. Dunkel, who carries the title of Knight Captain, is completely useless when it comes to things like cooking or hunting. I have no face to look at you anymore. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything more, just eat. I'll grill more later. I've spent over a decade running away from the Knight Alliance, so this is nothing. Dunkel watched him closely in silence, then spoke softly. Young master, I feel you are very different from your peers. Hiding your swordsmanship talent and spirit during the challenge. Because of that, sometimes I think that maybe you really are the reincarnated Archimand. Dunkel, never say that in front of that priest. Haha, of course I won't say it. Archimand is a demon who turned tens of millions of northern people into the undead. Hearing that, Klein just remained silent and didn't answer. The campfire was suddenly disturbed by something. Dunkel looked around, wondering. Is it the wind? It's not. Suddenly Klein's eyes became serious. Absolutely never mention that again. Dunkel's face became confused. Young master. Suddenly from behind, tragic screams reached the two of them. The whole city was suddenly broken by tragic cries for help. Ah, it's the undead, everyone run. The crazy undead charged forward, but Dunkel appeared and finished them off with frighteningly sharp sword strikes. But then he suddenly realized something and turned back, shouting. Young master. He only saw Klein gently killing the wandering undead in front of him. Klein ordered in a cold voice. What are you doing? Dunkel, go save the people. Yes, sir. The undead were taken down one by one until there were none left. The surrounding people crowded around, wondering. Thanks for helping us. But who are you? This is the second young master of the Rainland family. Rainland? More importantly, when did those things start appearing? Klein looked around and silently assessed. This is a form of resurrection magic used to revive and control the dead. As expected, it is the same technique as the one that attacked me before, the civilian explained. From 2 months ago, right after the Count's family restricted access to the mines, people also started disappearing around that time. Furthermore, those undead are all people from our village. What? Suddenly a man ran over and grabbed his shoulder. Hey, are you from the Rainland family? Answer me, I'm asking if you're really from the Rainland family. Wait, what do you think you're doing to the young master? Let me go. We've been begging for help for 2 months and haven't received a word back. And now only 2 people appeared just to ask when this started happening? Furthermore, the person you just slashed down is my father. He only knew how to work day and night at the mine. Why do we have to suffer this scene? The curses kept ringing in his ears, making Klein pause. Images of the past flashed in his mind. Archimonde, you and I. Suddenly his voice became cold, killing intent radiated intensely as he gritted his teeth. Hey, that's noisy, shut up. Why is all of that my fault? I'm not the one who turned your father and the others into the undead, right? If you want to vent your anger, you should choose the right target. His hand began to show familiar magical flows. Young master, I will handle everything here, so I summoned the innocent souls who died in pain. Young master, I will light the lantern to illuminate the path for you. The undead are moving again. I, Klein Rainland, will carry out your wishes, so follow my guidance. Right after that, the souls escaped from their bodies and floated in the air. They spoke in ancient languages, which only Klein could understand. Finally, he moved his lips slightly. I understand, but the surrounding people were stunned by the scene before their eyes. That's soul resonance. What is this? A technique rumored to have been used 200 years ago during the pandemic in the north to free the deceased. The man looked at his father's soul one last time, tears streaming down his face. He turned to look at his son, offered a gentle, satisfied smile, and then vanished into thin air. The innocent souls were thus set free, disappearing into the quiet night. The innocent souls were thus set free, disappearing into the quiet night. The villagers had pointed them in the right direction. The mine is that way. Just keep going straight up the mountain path. Dunkel spoke softly. What were you talking about with those spirits earlier? Nothing much. The spirits were just thanking me for helping them move on and begging me to take revenge for them. Revenge? You once said you might actually be the reincarnation of. Never, ever bring that up. The sword in Dunkel's hand slowly drew from its sheath, catching a reflection. That was Klein's silhouette. Then let me ask you this. He firmly pressed the weapon against Klein's throat, his voice turning serious. Who exactly are you? The story flashes back to the past, inside the expansive manor, where whispers spread like wine through every corridor. The servants and nobles looked at each other with eyes full of fear and suspicion. Is that really young Master Klein Rainland? The young master who was imprisoned in the monastery for 7 years has finally returned. The cursed one who called himself Archimonde. What unsettled everyone most wasn't his return, but those eyes. A gaze as pitch black and dark as an abyss. It was hard for anyone to believe those eyes belonged to a child, and perhaps it all truly began on that day. The first dead cat was found in the manor's kitchen, the second one appeared in the backyard. Then, immediately after, another one, until a total of 7 dead cats were found in different locations. Fear spread rapidly among both the servants and the nobles. I heard he's been using dark magic since he was born. His mother's bloodline is linked to dark sorcery. He only calls himself Archimonde. See? The rumors were right all along, that is the cursed bloodline. Soon, the whole manor turned its suspicion toward one person. Yet, no matter how intense the turmoil around him became, the young master showed no reaction at all. Ever since he returned, Klein just quietly stood by the window looking out, as if the whispers around him couldn't touch him even in the slightest. A knight whispered quietly, just as everyone says, the young master is suspected to be Archimonde, but he's still so young. That night, while the entire manor sank into the shadows of midnight, Dunkel suddenly noticed a lonely figure quietly walking through the hallway. The young master didn't stop or turn his head, simply continuing to walk deep into the darkness. Dunkel felt uneasy and quietly followed from behind, keeping a distance to avoid being detected. A moment later, Klein stopped at a place that made Dunkel freeze in his tracks. The graveyard. Why did he come here? The pale moonlight struggled to pierce through the old rows of tombstones, making vision blurry. Dunkel carefully navigated between the graves until he finally got a clear look at the young master, and the moment he saw the scene before him, his eyes widened in shock. What on earth is this? Klein stood amidst the carcasses of the dead cats, quietly preparing something. Beside those small, motionless bodies, he turned to look at Dunkel with dark, emotionless eyes and spoke calmly. Am I holding a funeral for them now? He turned to look at Dunkel with dark, emotionless eyes and spoke calmly. Am I holding a funeral for them now? Dunkel looked at the scene before him, feeling confused. Sorry, a funeral. Klein lowered his eyes to look at the cats lying still on the ground and calmly explained. Look at the wounds on their bodies. This is an infectious disease. They won't harm humans, but other animals will be affected. If left as they are, the plague will continue to spread. Wild beasts might even dig up the corpses. Hearing this, Dunkel's expression shifted slightly. He silently watched the young master kneeling in the graveyard in the cold night, personally handling the infected corpses with his own hands. "It'll ruin your hands," Dunkel said worriedly. "Let someone else handle this." But Klein shook his head slightly. "Someone has to do it anyway." His voice was cold and calm, yet it carried a strange sense of sincerity. The scene returns to the present, the atmosphere suddenly becomes suffocating. Dunkel stands before Klein with his blade pressed against his throat, his eyes sharp and filled with suspicion, clearly demanding, "Who exactly are you?" The young master didn't waver. Instead of answering immediately, Klein looked straight into Dunkel's eyes and then spoke slowly. "I want to ask you first, do you still remember the first commandment of Berkel Rainland?" Dunkel responded without hesitation. "That commandment is that a human is not defined by their origin, but by their actions." Klein nodded slightly. "Exactly." Then he continued slowly. "The reason you, someone from a poor peasant background, could rise to become a captain of the knights, and the reason I, the child of a foreign mother, am still alive today, are both thanks to those words." The silence between the two grew heavier. "Since leaving the monastery, you are the one who has been by my side the most." Dunkel looked straight into his eyes. "Then you decide. If you truly believe I am Archimonde, strike me down right here." As those words ended, the air in the underground corridor seemed to congeal. Dunkel's blade remained still for a few long, agonizing seconds, then finally, he slowly lowered it. But the look of suspicion in his eyes hadn't completely vanished. "I still haven't decided, and I still don't trust you." He tightened his grip on the sword and continued coldly. "But the one I serve is the second young master of Rainland, not a demon of the highest order on this continent." Hearing that, Klein turned his head to look deep into the darkness ahead and said calmly, "I see. Thanks for the compliment." The two continued to walk deeper into the underground corridor. The further they went, the colder and heavier the air became, as if death itself was seeping into every breath around them. The darkness was so thick they could barely see anything ahead. Dunkel lit a torch, the orange flame flickering against the stone walls and finally exposing the horrific scene hidden in the darkness. The smell of corpses. Corpses were scattered everywhere, many already rotted into dry skeletons. Bones piled up on the ground in every direction, creating a terrifying and haunting scene. But then Dunkel noticed something moving ahead. A few corpses started to stir, and his expression instantly hardened. 7 of them. There are definitely more deep inside. Klein calmly stepped forward and spoke in a cold voice. "I summon you. Answer my call." Then his voice echoed once more in the cellar. "I grant you bodies. Crush my enemies." The moment those words ended, the skeletons scattered on the floor reacted simultaneously, each one standing up and charging straight at the enemy ahead. Dunkel's eyes widened in amazement as the battle erupted instantly. "Kill them all for me." The corpses clashed violently in the narrow cellar. Bones shattered, weapons clattered, and terrifying roars echoed endlessly in the darkness. This is truly absurd. How can skeletons like these do this? Klein glanced over when he heard him and replied calmly. "Danton's mercenaries said the exact same thing." Then, his voice held a hint of amusement. "Is it really that interesting?" Before long, the battle ended. The enemy corpses fell one by one, their bodies disintegrated, and the noise gradually ceased. Dunkel raised the torch to light the path ahead. "Young master, this way." Terrifying noises continued to echo from deep within the underground ruins. Dunkel tightened his grip on his sword and listened to assess the situation. "About 40 of them. We're being outnumbered." But contrary to Dunkel's tension, Klein remained perfectly calm, without a shred of panic. He slowly raised his hand and began to chant in a cold, commanding tone. "I remove the shackles binding your bodies." The air around them suddenly became heavy as dark energy spread across the battlefield. "Free the suffering souls held in chains and obey my command." Immediately, the exact same scene played out again. The fallen enemy corpses began to move in unison. This time, under Klein's control. Dunkel's eyes widened. "Young master, this is converting defeated corpses into allies." Klein answered calmly, his eyes still fixed ahead. "Basic tactics when necromancers face off against each other." "All right, this should be enough to fight a decent battle." Without hesitation, he commanded, "Vanguard, advance." The skeletal warriors immediately lunged forward like true soldiers following their commander's orders. Dunkel also charged in right after them. "Let's go too." Dunkel acknowledged. The deeper they went into the ruins, the more corpses appeared from the shadows. Zombies and skeletons poured into the narrow corridors from every side. But Klein's army didn't stop. He coldly commanded, "Rear guard, provide attack support. Continue to break through." The warriors under his command pierced straight into the enemy force with terrifying coordination. Bones shattered and rusty weapons clashed. Terrifying screams echoed endlessly in the dark underground corridors. Dunkel fought alongside them and couldn't stop thinking. It was hard to believe even while witnessing it with his own eyes. Skeletons were supposed to be the lowest level corpses, yet how could they move like this? It was almost like seasoned warriors following a perfect commander. Every order Klein gave was executed perfectly. Before long, the battle ended, and the entire enemy force was completely annihilated. When silence returned to the ruins, Dunkel stood looking at the overwhelming destruction around him, unable to say a word. "We just wiped out a force 4 times our size. This actually happened." Klein calmly looked deeper into the darkness ahead and spoke. "From here on out, it's just the two of us." The two continued to walk deeper inside. Klein spoke. "You said you would trust me, so then trust me to the very end." Dunkel followed silently, speaking up a moment later. "It seems we've gone quite deep. How much further do we have to go?" But before Klein could answer, something fell from above. A drop of blood landed right on Dunkel's face. His expression instantly stiffened. He slowly raised the torch toward the ceiling and carefully stepped forward. "Is anyone there?" But the moment the fire illuminated the area ahead, Dunkel froze in horror. Dozens of corpses were hanging from ropes from the ceiling. Dozens of corpses were hanging from ropes from the ceiling. What on earth is this? Klein silently watched the dangling corpses and calmly stated the truth. "It seems these are the villagers reported missing. They were kidnapped and used as raw material for reincarnation magic." Just then, another voice echoed in the cellar. "As expected, you understand this matter very well." Both Klein and Dunkel immediately turned toward the source of the sound. From the darkness ahead, a woman slowly stepped out, a wicked smile on her lips. "Reincarnation magic is a spell to revive corpses and turn them into subordinates. That is exactly why it requires a large amount of high-quality corpses. Isn't that the basic knowledge of our necromancer circles?" Then she looked straight at Klein, and her smile widened even further. "I didn't expect to meet you in a place like this." Her crimson eyes narrowed as she uttered a title that should never have been spoken aloud. "Long time no see, demon of the continent." "Greetings, Lord Archimond." The moment those words hit his ears, for the first time since the beginning, Klein's expression truly changed. The story flashes back to the past again. The scene returns to the Rainland Manor. Dunkel stood beside Klein and spoke respectfully. "Shall we go meet the Duke now, young master?" Klein answered calmly. "Let me change my clothes first." Dunkel nodded, but just then, Klein suddenly felt a strange presence nearby. It seemed someone was over there, and indeed, someone was watching him. Leia was quietly hiding in the shadows nearby, silently observing everything. "Why am I hiding here?" Necromancer. This term stems from two words, necros, meaning corpse, and divination, meaning prophecy. Originally, it referred to those who summoned spirits to receive prophecies and omens from the departed. In ancient times, necromancers were feared but were not yet considered absolute monsters. But everything changed after that day. The entire continent sank into horror during a great catastrophe recorded in history as the event. It was an unprecedented disaster in human history. Tens of millions of undead simultaneously invaded across the continent. That army went beyond all limits of human understanding. They didn't eat, didn't sleep, and didn't fear pain, fatigue, or even death. The war only ended when the legendary hero Burkle Rainland finally succeeded in defeating them. After the catastrophe ended, countless people were drawn to the terrifying power that necromancy possessed. They successively tried to research and recreate those forbidden arts. But in the end, all modern necromancers could do was recreate reincarnation magic. Therefore, today's necromancers have merely been reduced to second-rate sorcerers who only know how to raise corpses as expendable foot soldiers, just like the necromancer standing before Klein. At this moment, the scene returns to the present. The red-haired woman slowly steps forward with a mysterious and graceful smile, introducing herself. "Long time no see, my lord. I am Pale, a necromancer." The moment those words rang out, Dunkel's expression changed completely. his astonishment impossible to hide. But before he could fully digest that, a more terrifying detail immediately caught his attention. Klein narrowed his eyes as he felt the overwhelming power surrounding her. That's right, he silently acknowledged it, and his gaze shifted toward the robe she was wearing. An incredible amount of mana, she had directly channeled magic into her robe. As far as I know, only a few people can do that with soft fabric. Realizing the danger standing before them, Dunkel immediately stepped forward and pointed his sword straight at Pale. Hey you, this is the second young Master Klein of Rainland. Don't you dare call him by the name of such a filthy demon. There was a brief moment of silence. The red-haired woman noticed Klein's reaction and suddenly let out a playful laugh. I was just joking. Calling him that is quite disrespectful to the young master of Rainland. But her smile slowly faded, and her voice became calmer. Even so, I know the rumors surrounding you and the strange magic I just felt earlier. You are definitely a necromancer, just like me. Pale continued to look at Klein with curious interest. But how should I put it? A necromancer who uses a sword. Her smile widened slightly as if she found it funny, but before she could say more, Dunkel immediately stepped in, interrupting with an angry voice. Enough, what nonsense are you saying? Answer the question. The blade remained pointed straight at her. What did you do to those people and who is behind you? But the red-haired woman completely ignored the question. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and calmly continued her explanation. A true necromancer doesn't need to rely on tools. Dark mana began to radiate from her body in all directions. We control spirits and dominate death. The moment she released her energy, all the corpses hanging in the room reacted violently. The bodies twitched abnormally as dark magic surged through them like a curse, bones crunched, and flesh twisted horribly. The bodies twitched abnormally as dark magic surged through them like a curse, bones crunched, and flesh twisted horribly. A terrifying smile appeared on the corner of her mouth, and she declared in a voice full of delusion and madness, the true meaning of necromancy, the masterpiece I have spent my whole life perfecting. Just then, something massive started emerging from the darkness. First was a giant hand, then huge feet slowly stepped forward, causing the entire cellar to shake violently with every step. That creature was so huge that even the ceiling barely had enough room to contain it. Dunkel stared at the monster with utter horror. This is truly insane. Never seen anything like this, not even on the battlefield. The one-eyed giant creature slowly revealed itself completely from the darkness. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman gently stepped close to the giant monster as if soothing a dear friend. Her voice suddenly became strange and tender. Come here. I'm sorry for making you wait so long. It must have been hard, right? Then she slowly pointed at Klein and Dunkel, who were standing in front. Crush those two into dust. The giant monster immediately charged straight at Klein and Dunkel with terrifying speed, every step causing the underground cellar to shake like an earthquake. Seeing the Cyclops lunging, Dunkel's eyes widened in sheer terror. The creature closed the distance almost instantly. The moment Dunkel realized the young master's life was in danger, he shouted with all his might. It's dangerous, young master. But at that exact moment, Klein suddenly used all his strength to push Dunkel aside. Dunkel's body was thrown far away, and the Cyclops' devastating attack slammed down on Klein instead. The impact shook the entire underground cellar violently. Klein was knocked away before collapsing onto the stone floor. Dust and debris flew everywhere. His condition immediately turned critical after bearing the attack. The giant Cyclops stood towering over him once again. It raised its massive arm, preparing to crush Klein before he could recover. But before the next blow landed, Dunkel suddenly appeared, shielding the two of them. He roared and swung his sword with all his strength directly at the Cyclops. Stay away from the young master. The powerful slash struck the monster directly, creating a loud noise that echoed throughout the cellar. Seeing that, even Klein looked briefly surprised. The red-haired woman calmly observed the fight from afar with interest in her eyes. That was a nice attack, Sir Knight. Her smile slowly widened. But with talent at that level, you won't leave a single scratch on my masterpiece. Dunkel's expression instantly stiffened, because at that very moment, he witnessed what she had just said become reality. The Cyclops' wounded leg was regenerating, the flesh twisted abnormally and then fully restored itself as if the wound had never existed. Its leg was growing back. Fear flashed through his heart for a second, but then his eyes slowly shifted toward Klein, who was lying injured behind him. No problem. His hand tightened around the sword hilt. The young master had risked his life to save him with a body that didn't have a shred of mana. Dunkel lowered his head slightly in shame. I cannot believe I dared to doubt someone like him was. The guilt in his heart was heavier than ever. The giant Cyclops lunged at them again with destructive force. Dunkel immediately rushed to block its path. He unleashed a series of extremely fast consecutive strikes at the monster's massive body. The blade moved faster and faster as sparks flew with every blow. Slash after slash rained down on the Cyclops, but no matter how much he attacked, it was all futile. There is only one way to make up for this. Dunkel's breath grew heavier as he continued to fight desperately. I will stake my life. One more powerful slash descended as he protected the young master. The battle continued to escalate, becoming more intense with every moment. Even knowing the Cyclops possessed terrifying regenerative abilities, Dunkel still refused to let go. He lunged forward again, unleashing one attack after another against the monster's colossal body with immense power. But no matter how many blows landed, none had any real effect. The Cyclops kept advancing as if nothing could stop it. Then, in the next moment, the monster swung a giant arm straight at Dunkel. The destructive attack struck him directly. Dunkel's body was violently hurled across the underground cellar, slamming hard into the stone wall before collapsing to the floor. His condition instantly took a turn for the worse from that impact. Watching the scene unfold, the red-haired woman slowly smiled. Truly beyond imagination, the story gradually reveals the truth behind the madness. An unlimited obsession with necromancy had consumed an entire life. After countless experiments and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge far beyond the boundaries of common understanding, her research finally surpassed the limits of ordinary necromancy, and eventually, Pale succeeded in creating a completely unique variant that no one else could replicate. Thus, she believed one thing with her entire being: this is innate genius. Even Archimonde couldn't create something like this. I have surpassed the knowledge of. On the other side of the battlefield, the Cyclops slowly lifted Dunkel's injured body with a giant hand, preparing to crush him completely. But right at that moment, a calm voice echoed in the cellar. The core connection point. Klein slowly stepped forward as he spoke. That is the first key to synthesizing a Cyclops. The second is the core stitching. That is precisely why its limbs regenerate even after being severed. He added softly, this is also the source of its regenerative power. The air suddenly shifted, even Pale's expression slowly hardened as she listened. Then how do you kill that thing? Klein calmly continued to answer his own question. Attacking its body directly as Dunkel did is useless. He slowly raised his weapon. Just destroy that single core, and it's over. Pale's eyes widened slightly. Then where is that core located? Klein replied instantly. A Cyclops' core never stays in one place. His gaze sharpened. Because that single point connects directly to its death. It constantly moves throughout its body, like blood flowing through veins. The moment those words were spoken, Pale's confidence began to crack. No way. Finding it is impossible because it never stops moving. The moment those words were spoken, Pale's confidence began to crack. No way. Finding it is impossible because it never stops moving. She spread her arms and commanded with murderous intent in her eyes. Before true talent, you are nothing. Crush him. At that exact moment, Klein quietly closed his eyes for a second. Memories from his past life flooded his mind, memories of countless battles slaughtering thousands upon thousands of Cyclopes across various battlefields. The sensation was still so vivid that it felt like it happened yesterday. He just needed to trust those instincts once more. Then, in a single moment, Klein struck. A sharp ray of light tore through the darkness. Before anyone could react, his attack pierced straight through the Cyclops' moving core with absolute precision. It didn't just split the monster's body in two, it also took the arrogant sorceress's head. A shattering sound echoed, the core crumbled completely, and so did her head. The giant monster suddenly froze, then its massive frame began to collapse in chunks before slamming into the ground, motionless. While Pale's eyes were still dazed, death stood before her. What? You, in the end. Her voice trembled as fear appeared on her face for the first time. If this is what she spent her whole life creating, perhaps she should make it a hobby for her next life. The scene shifts to a completely different dimension, a voice echoes in the endless void. Death is often likened to sleep. Just as a tired body is freed from the burdens of daily life, perhaps a body steeped in life is also liberated from its own karma. Right at that moment, Pale's eyes slowly opened. Her hands touched what was underneath. It was only water. Her gaze wandered throughout the strange space surrounding her. Countless box-shaped coffins drifted aimlessly through the endless void. Looking around in confusion, she muttered, "Where am I?" The mysterious voice replied calmly, "You finally awakened? This is the place beyond the world, where souls go after death. It is the afterlife." The red-haired witch immediately frowned and shouted, "The afterlife? Stop talking nonsense, let me out of here right now." Standing amidst the floating coffins was Klein in the form of his past life, holding his weapon, his ice-cold eyes staring straight at her. "You wanting to leave means you still don't understand your situation. Then let's begin the trial to judge your sins." The moment those words hit her ears, the witch's expression changed completely, her confidence vanished, and panic began to spread across her face. In her name, she stammered out that name, and immediately, thousands of thoughts tore through her mind like a whirlwind. She knew that name. A name recorded throughout history, a name that made generations tremble, the one who appeared in the ancient books of dark mages, the name of a catastrophe that once shook the entire continent. The monarch who created an unprecedented army of the dead. The demon of the continent, the origin and end of all soul-summoning arts, the commander of tens of millions of undead, the king of necromancers. No matter how many eras pass, just mentioning that name is enough to send shivers down the spines of those who truly understand its meaning. Klein spoke again. "Come closer." As soon as those words ended, her body automatically stepped forward. "Why is my body moving on its own?" Klein looked straight at her, each word of judgment falling like a blade. "You turned innocent people into test subjects. You kidnapped and tortured them, used them as tools, binding them so they couldn't die, all to satisfy your desires." Each word struck her like a slash tearing deep into her mind. Pale desperately denied it, her voice trembling. No, that's impossible. Archimonde is dead, isn't he? He died 200 years ago." She pressed her hands over her ears, desperately trying to block out that voice, but it was useless. His voice still rang clearly as before, echoing straight inside her mind. "You even used the dead as tools, so from now on, you yourself will become my tool." Right at that moment, countless drifting coffins began to descend from above. One by one, they circled around her. Then, the lid of a coffin slowly opened, and a terrifying force erupted from within, instantly pulling the red-haired witch toward the darkness. She struggled madly, thrashing and screaming. "Wait, stop, what does this mean? Why must I become your tool?" Without a word of reply, the pulling force only grew stronger until she was completely swallowed inside. The lid slammed shut to the sound of her screaming. "No!" The echo reverberated throughout the endless underworld like a final verdict for a condemned soul. "Please, are you afraid of dying?" Klein swung the scythe in his hand and said, "If so, then rest easy, we will meet again soon." The coffin was sliced in two with a single decisive stroke. Immediately after, a sharp snapping sound echoed in the darkness. Pale scream erupted violently as if escaping a nightmare. Pale scream erupted violently as if escaping a nightmare. A flicker of realization flashed across her face. "I'm not dead, it was just a dream, I'm still alive." Dunkel stood there, his eyes filled with horror, unable to believe that only her head remained. He scanned the vast destruction around him, speaking helplessly. "What the hell happened here? I only lost consciousness for a moment, but what on earth happened? Did the young master do all of this by himself?" The red-haired woman couldn't hold back and screamed. "What on earth happened to me? Why did it end up like this?" Klein ignored her and turned to Dunkel. "Let's begin, Dunkel." Dunkel immediately stood up straight and answered without hesitation. "Yes, young master." Pale screamed desperately. "What exactly did you do?" Klein finally looked at her, his voice cold and indifferent as if speaking to the air. "Have you regained your senses? Then you should understand your situation yourself." The moment that voice hit her ears, her entire body froze. "Wait. That voice is exactly the one I heard in my mind." Fear began to surge again. She suddenly saw the figure of Archimonde looming over her. "I told you we would meet again." Her eyes widened in horror. "That wasn't a dream? Does that mean the rumors about Klein Rainland are true?" "You are." Before she could finish her sentence, Klein reached out and covered her mouth. "That is not something you should be saying." He began to whisper words from hell. "I need information. Who sent you to the north? How many more like you are there? Where were they sent, when, and why? Spit it out, and I will give you a gentle, painless death. But if you refuse, I will grant you eternal life. Pale asked back in fear. Eternal life? Don't tell me in this condition. Yes, like this, forever. He leaned his face close to hers and smiled. Let's see how long you can endure without shedding a single tear. A moment later, Dunkel carefully wrote everything down in his notebook. I've recorded everything she confessed, young master. Is that so? He stood up wearily and replied. If you're done, let's go. I'm sick of this mine. Pale desperately called after him. Wait. What about me? I told you everything you wanted to know. A smile flickered on Klein's lips as he replied. Oh, that's right, I promised to kill you, didn't I? Thank heaven. Finally, I can die. His hands flared with sources of magical power. Don't worry, I always keep my promises. He pointed his hand toward Pale, but nothing happened. Just endure it for about a week. From the darkness, a massive, swarming pack of snakes surged out endlessly. They will take care of finishing you off. From the darkness, a massive, swarming pack of snakes surged out endlessly. They will take care of finishing you off. That horrific scene completely shattered any remnants of composure she had left. She began to shriek shrilly. Screams of terror echoed throughout the area as the snakes continued to advance. Get away! Aya, it hurts. Klein turned and smiled one last time before leaving. Thank you, Pale, for becoming my tool. Her eyes were filled with hatred and pain. You bastard, I curse you. The scene shifts back to the Rainland Manor. The Lord was carefully flipping through the pages of the detailed report. After reading it all, his father spoke cautiously. The Empire deployed dark mages to the north, and the Holy Church ignored it. Is this the truth? Klein stood straight and answered without hesitation. Yes, exactly as written in there. The undead in the mines, including the test subjects, amount to about 150 bodies. Nearly 30 people have gone missing in the village we visited alone. The situation in other places is surely worse. Besides, the nobles who should be dealing with this are busy fighting for political power. The room fell into a heavy silence as Klein's father absorbed the full gravity of the situation. Then he turned to the butler. Step forward, send the night squad to the places Klein mentioned. The butler bowed immediately. Yes, sir. Should I request reinforcements from the border? Just send a letter to them, it's better to do something than nothing. After giving the orders, Klein's father looked back at his son. For the first time, a glimmer of approval flashed in his eyes. You have achieved a great feat. After giving the orders, Klein's father looked back at his son. For the first time, a glimmer of approval flashed in his eyes. You have achieved a great feat. After giving the orders, Klein's father looked back at his son. For the first time, a glimmer of approval flashed in his eyes. You have achieved a great feat. His father listened quietly, then reached into a drawer, took out a small object, and handed it to Klein. Take this. I intended to give you a few more missions, but it seems that is no longer necessary. This is the Rainland Knight badge. For now, you will start as an apprentice knight. Considering what you have achieved, this is perhaps not a worthy reward. Klein received the badge respectfully. Not at all. He pinned the badge to his coat and replied. This is more than enough for me. His father looked at him for a moment and nodded slightly. I understand. You must be very tired. Go and get some rest. Klein bowed respectfully. Thank you, father. He turned and left the room. As soon as the door closed, the butler finally spoke. Facing over 70 ordinary undead, a giant undead type, and even a dark mage in a confined space. Even taking into account Dunkel's combat prowess, this is still. But before he could finish, Klein's father interrupted. Send a letter to my younger brother. Step forward, confused, the butler blinked. Sir, but he. I know he isn't the type to come for just any reason. So tell him this. Klein's father's gaze turned to the door where his son had just stepped out. The genius you've been looking for your whole life has finally appeared. The scene shifts to the hallway where Klein was leisurely walking toward the estate grounds. Unlike the Duke's residence, where outsiders could enter freely, the Knight's garrison area was a restricted military zone. Even Garrison couldn't enter without permission. That bastard is surely still suspecting me, right? He's eager to conduct the cleansing ritual, but unfortunately, you will never see me there again. His expression hardened slightly as old memories resurfaced. I decided from the day I killed Danton. I've decided to restore this family to its past glory. Alright, now that I'm an apprentice knight, the next step is. Suddenly, from behind, his little maid jumped and hugged Klein, startling him. Young Master Klein. Terrible pain made him buckle. What's wrong, Aaron? Are you out of cookies in your room? I just broke my 7th vertebra. The family is doomed. Aaron pointed at him and sighed. Do you really think cookies are the only thing I care about? Completely missing her point, Klein replied casually. Well, I don't know. Go to the kitchen and ask for more. Aaron seemed to remember and hurried to say the real reason. Oh, that's right, Father Garrison is here right now. The moment those words reached his ears, Klein's entire body instantly went rigid. All the painful memories and unpleasant encounters related to Garrison flooded into Klein's mind like a tidal wave. But before he could react, another voice spoke from behind. Did your mission go smoothly? Damn it, what is this? Klein turned around slowly. I've been waiting for you, young Master Klein. Standing before him now was the giant priest, the one who could crush him instantly. The scene flashes back to the past when Klein was a child. Young Master Klein, where are you? Come out, please. Young Master. Young Master Klein. Attendants whispered to each other. Any sign of the young master? Doesn't look like he's here, and I don't see him on the other side either. This is bad, it's almost time for the cleansing ritual, yet he's vanished without a trace. Young Master, your father is furious. If you come out now, he'll forgive you. Klein hid in a tree and thought to himself. Don't make me laugh. The last time that old bastard said exactly the same thing, he stripped me and hung me up, didn't he? For now, just check around the manor. Understood, you guys get lost. So he lay on the tree and slept from morning until late at night, when that nightmare struck, making Klein jump awake. No, Garrison, not there. He looked around and realized he had fallen asleep. He climbed down slowly. They must have given up by now, time to go back. But then his eyes caught something terrifying. Isn't that a northern grizzly bear? Northern grizzly bears, apex predators endemic to the north. They were extremely aggressive and enjoyed brutal hunts. Their claws were specifically structured to tear flesh and break prey's bones. Without soul-summoning magic, he was just a light snack for them. He had no choice but to wait for them to leave. The evening temperature became colder. Damn this northern weather. I gave everything for the people of the north who died unjustly, yet I was reincarnated into the family of the one who killed me, and even in this life, I still have to live a life on the run. There's Archimond. Catch him. That child is cursed. A while after waking up, Klein was carried back on Father Garrison's back. You're awake, young master, Klein muttered. Did I freeze to death? Is this hell? Haha, of course not. I found you unconscious in a tree, so I'm carrying you back. Ha! There were bears there. Don't worry, I've already taken care of them. Whatever, put me down first. I'd rather die than be carried by you. You have a high fever, so just stay still. Why did you save me? If you had left me there, I would have frozen to death or been eaten. I thought you were the one who wanted me dead more than anyone in the world. A star doesn't create darkness for itself, it simply shines where it belongs. A young life is the same, they have yet to distinguish between right and wrong. As for the future of a young life, I have no authority to strip it away. Klein was stunned for a moment, then thought to himself, are these really words he should be saying to me? After all the pain he has caused me. However, if that life chooses to become darkness itself, in other words, if you are truly the genuine Archimond I have been searching for, then you should fend for yourself, because I will be the one to end you with my own hands. Returning to the present, Garrison smiled faintly and said, Long time no see, young Master Klein. His eyes narrowed in caution. It has been a long time, indeed. Garrison, that's for sure. I had some urgent business to attend to at the church. While I was there, an old friend gave me something quite interesting. He pulled a cross-shaped glass vial from his pocket, filled with a strange liquid. The moment he saw it, Klein was immediately startled. Is that ectoplasm? Wait, it's detecting my demonic energy. Garrison continued to explain, a necromancer appeared when the young master was attacked in the forest, and I personally dealt with that bastard. But here's the problem, according to this device, there wasn't just one necromancer's trace, it was two. That's what it's pointing to. His voice remained as calm as ever, but I could hear it. The heart of an Archimand. After facing countless masters and monsters, an Archimand's intuition was warning of a terrible danger. Klein looked at Garrison's hand and thought, can I deal with him with my current strength? What if I use my ability to copy his skills? No, that's impossible. First, I have to survive just seeing that technique. And I've only just started accumulating combat experience. How could I fight this monster? I would be crushed like a stray rat on the side of the road, nothing more, nothing less. Go ahead and cast your necromancy right now. What? I'm giving you a chance out of respect for our past. If it's just necromancy to control corpses, I could just report this to the church. But if it's the original form of necromancy that can manipulate souls, if it's the same incantation used by the person I'm thinking of, you won't escape death. Klein silently lowered his head to think. That bastard who only knew how to torture me underwater in the name of a cleansing ritual is, but it's actually quite funny. An old acquaintance of mine once said something similar to you, the future of young children. Back then, I didn't understand what that meant, the future of a young life. No one has the right to trample on that potential. But when you said that, I understood for a brief moment that this is the justice you believe in, and I know this isn't because you hate me. I was the loser once, and that's why I had to die. But things are different now. Do you want me to use necromancy here? Will you kill me if I'm an Archimand? No. Cut the crap. I will decide for myself who I become. I won't run away ever again. Garrison was silent, then replied softly, then I have no other choice. I will have to force you to use necromancy. Instantly, his hand tightened menacingly. He lunged forward. I have to dodge this hit at all costs. Just once. I only need to do it once. And then, at the last moment, Klein jumped aside and avoided it. I did it. Garrison was clearly quite surprised by that. As for Klein, he still couldn't let his guard down. The vial containing the ectoplasm fell to the floor and shattered into pieces. The servants backed away in fear, screaming, what is happening? Is the priest attacking the young master? Klein regained his composure. Here's my chance. If I attack while he's distracted, but when he reached for his side, the sword that was supposed to be there had vanished. My sword is gone. Garrison slowly approached with the sword. Looking for this? He threw it aside and said, a necromancer using a sword? I knew it. This bastard, he really intended to kill me right here. You don't need that thing. Garrison's fist came at his face again, but suddenly, Klein cracked a strangely confident smile. Even though his life was hanging by a thread, the force from the punch blew everything away. The walls of the mansion collapsed because of it, and everywhere was plunged into chaos, filled with smoke and dust. The servants hurriedly fled before they could die in vain. Cough, cough, call the guards now. Hurry! Garrison's face became grave. You are. Before him stood the 7th Duke of the Rainland family. Heinkel Rainland, can you explain your actions just now, Garrison? Before my sword cuts your head off, Garrison stared back, not showing a hint of fear, while Klein quietly observed the entire situation unfolding before his eyes. Just as I thought, everything is going according to plan. At the same time, Heinkel immediately ordered the knights and guards around him, guards, get into position over there. Protect the Duke and the young master. The air had become extremely tense, and Klein could clearly see which way everything was heading. Observing those around him, he calmly analyzed the situation in his head. The knights are very sensitive to hostility and murderous intent. If I drag this out any longer, Heinkel and the Rainland Knights will rush in. The only opponent is the special agent Garrison. Heinkel Rainland took another step forward and pointed his sword directly at Garrison. His voice was calm but carried a clear warning. I'll ask you one more time. Garrison, were you just trying to attack Klein? Surely you all know what that means. On the entire continent, there is no law banning dark magic, except for the Holy Kingdom. You know better than anyone what dark magic means for the young master. His words immediately changed the current atmosphere. Everyone understood the implications behind that accusation. Yet, Heinkel had no intention of backing down. On the contrary, his gaze became even more determined as he replied, "He has suffered for 7 years because of a baseless rumor. I cannot let that continue any longer. Furthermore, I am his father. I will not allow you to lay a finger on my son, Agent. If you don't want to consider the Rainlands your enemy, restrain your murderous intent." The moment those words reached Garrison's ears, his expression instantly hardened, and the tension in the area climbed to a whole new level. The guards sensed something was about to happen. Some instinctively tightened their grip on their weapons, while the surrounding knights remained in a state of high alert, ready to react at any moment. And then suddenly, a terrifying flow of energy began to pour out from Garrison's body. The pressure spread like a violent tidal wave, hitting everyone around, making the air so suffocating that even breathing became difficult. His clothes fluttered under the power of his own aura, and a strange, almost fanatical smile gradually appeared on his face, making him look even more terrifying than before. As that overwhelming flow of energy continued to rise, he began to chant holy words in a loud, firm voice. "Therefore, do not let your faith be shamed. Do not entrust your heart to the tongue of the godless. I swear before God, no mercy for the heretic." The moment he finished, the energy exploding from him became even more powerful, and the terrifying pressure engulfed the entire area. Like an invisible storm, the guards were now in real danger. The pressure bearing down on them was far beyond what an ordinary person could withstand. Some instinctively stepped back, while others had to struggle to stand firm under the weight of his presence. The air seemed to tremble, and the atmosphere felt as if it could explode into violence at any moment. Seeing this dangerous development, Heinkel immediately realized how serious the situation had become. Not taking his eyes off Garrison, he shouted a warning to everyone around, "Don't approach him carelessly." Dunkel looked at the scene unfolding before him and immediately realized the gravity of the situation. His expression shifted as he shouted the alarm, "We are in danger. Heinkel Rainland." At the same time, Heinkel Rainland also began to release his own energy to counter Garrison's overwhelming pressure. Two terrifying streams of power collided, causing the entire mansion to shake. Cracks began to spread across the structure. Dunkel raised his voice even further and warned everyone around, "The mansion is collapsing. Everyone, be careful." Panic quickly spread among those present as both Heinkel and Garrison continued to unleash more and more power. The pressure from their auras became too much for the surrounding environment to handle, and it seemed the entire building could collapse at any time. Even so, neither side had any intention of backing down. Heinkel tightened his grip on his weapon and gave a final warning to Garrison in a cold, firm voice, "I warn you for the last time. Lower your fist, Agent." However, Garrison was completely unmoved and replied without hesitation, "This is divine judgment, Rainland." As soon as those words left his mouth, Garrison planted his feet firmly and braced his stance. His entire body seemed to be accumulating massive power in preparation for an attack. At the same time, Heinkel was the one to move first, lunging forward with incredible speed. He rushed straight toward Garrison like a meteor, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Garrison responded with an extremely powerful punch, carrying force that could destroy everything in its path. The violent attack tore through the air, heading straight for Heinkel. Yet, Heinkel continued to advance without a hint of fear. Despite the terrifying power hurtling toward him, in the moment he lunged at his opponent. He glanced briefly at his son and activated one of the most closely guarded secret techniques of the Rainland family. His voice echoed across the battlefield as he unleashed it, "Secret technique of the Rainland family, Meteor Sword, second form." The moment the secret technique was activated, a massive stream of energy erupted from his weapon and collided directly with Garrison's attack. The collision between the two powers created a terrifying explosion, causing the entire area to shake. Those nearby were pushed back by the intense shockwave, the surrounding air seeming to detonate with energy as the two attacks clashed. Observing this chaotic scene, Klein immediately realized everything was spiraling out of control and muttered in worry, "Wait. Things are getting complicated now." Just as the collision between Heinkel and Garrison seemed about to swallow everything around them, a small figure suddenly appeared between the two terrifying attacks. It was Erin, leaving everyone present in absolute shock. She stepped right into the path of both attacks and raised her hand as if telling them to stop. The scene was so unexpected that everyone froze in a moment of disbelief. The terrifying collision that threatened to destroy the area was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a little girl standing fearlessly between two power monsters. Those witnessing it could hardly believe their eyes. Dunkel was particularly terrified and immediately shouted at the top of his lungs, "Dangerous! Get out of there! Why are you there?" Ignoring the panic around her, Erin calmly stepped down and moved forward as if nothing unusual was happening. Then, she looked straight at Garrison and spoke in a completely innocent voice, in total contrast to the deathly atmosphere surrounding them. "Father Garrison, you promised to bring me a gift when you returned." The moment those words reached everyone's ears, the entire battlefield seemed to freeze. Everyone looked at the girl with looks of absolute astonishment. The tension that had been heading toward a life-or-death battle was suddenly interrupted by a conversation about gifts. Even Garrison seemed surprised by her words. After a moment of silence, he simply replied, "A gift." Erin nodded seriously and continued, "That's right, a gift. Father, you definitely promised to buy it for me. You know, heaven will punish those who lie." Her words left everyone speechless, completely unable to process the situation. Damaged furniture and debris continued to fall with loud crashing sounds, but Erin didn't pay any attention to them. Klein observed the bizarre scene and couldn't help but comment, "Being this oblivious to the atmosphere is almost a talent." A moment later, Garrison was silent before finally reaching into his pocket. His terrifying aura hadn't completely vanished, but his expression softened slightly as he took something out. Then he said in a fairly normal voice, "These are cookies from a famous bakery on 3rd Avenue at Royal Gate." He handed the pastry to Erin, who immediately accepted it with sparkling eyes as if the life-or-death confrontation hadn't just happened. She looked at the gift with genuine excitement and said, "That's wonderful. What about Father's share?" Garrison was silent for a moment before speaking, his voice much calmer than before, as if remembering memories buried deep in his heart. "When I was young, I grew up in a place where even a sip of water was hard to find, let alone food. Most of the friends I grew up with didn't survive into adulthood. The name of that place was the Archimonde cult." The moment Klein heard that name, his eyes narrowed in suspicion, and he immediately thought to himself, "Did I create that? No, I don't have any memories of that, even in my previous life. What on earth was that?" The name meant absolutely nothing to him. Yet, based on Garrison's expression, it was clear that behind that calm face was a painful history, in which hatred, sadness, and regret had accumulated over many years. Garrison continued, his gaze fixed on the distant void as if he could still see that terrifying place. "Since I was young, that was why I had to destroy it. The name that ruined my life and took away my young friends, even if it meant sacrificing my own life." His voice became increasingly heavy. Then he turned his attention to Erin. "So Erin, eat up, and eat my share too, because that's all I can do." His gaze then shifted to Klein, his expression hardening again, "And as for young Master Klein, next time won't end like this." Having said that, Garrison turned and began to leave the mansion. The massive pressure he had released earlier gradually faded, and many soldiers nearby were clearly relieved. The fact that a battle had been avoided made them feel relieved, and some actually looked happy to have survived the confrontation. Klein watched Garrison's back as he left and thought to himself, making Garrison an enemy. That cannot happen again. Furthermore, next time means he will come back to kill me. We will eventually keep chasing each other until one side lets go. Before he could continue thinking, Erin suddenly appeared beside him, holding the cookie and happily asking, "Young master, would you like a bite?" Klein was startled by her sudden appearance and replied, "You startled me, Erin. You like strawberry cream cake, don't you?" Erin immediately nodded, "Yes, I do." Klein smiled slightly, "Then go ask the chef to make one. Tell them I sent you. You can eat it all." The moment she heard those magical words, Erin's eyes brightened and she ran with incredible speed toward the kitchen. Klein watched her disappear and couldn't help but think, seeing her like this, all the life-or-death drama just now has become meaningless. However, there was still an important issue that hadn't been resolved. Heinkel Rainland approached him and said in a grave voice, "Klein, I still have one final barrier to overcome. It seems we need to talk in private. Have you been learning dark magic?" Then, once they moved to a more private place where no one could eavesdrop, Klein simply replied, "Yes." Hearing the direct confirmation, Heinkel stared at him for a long time before speaking again. "That was the shackle that bound you for 7 years. So why, of all things, would you learn dark magic? How on earth did you manage that?" Klein had already prepared an answer for this question and calmly replied, "I learned it from the books in Mother's side room." The moment he said it, he thought to himself, "Of course, that's a lie. But with my status, this is the most reasonable excuse." He continued aloud, "I won't make excuses for hiding it from you, Father, but dark magic is the only way I can survive." Heinkel immediately frowned and replied, "There must be another way, even with just your swordsmanship." Klein shook his head and firmly responded, "You must have seen the report Dunkel submitted. I have no mana. I can't do anything if I only rely on swordsmanship. His expression became serious as he continued to explain the greater danger facing the principality. The Empire is using dark mages to gnaw away at the north, which we haven't even suspected. You must accept what I am before it's too late. While saying those words, Klein had calculated everything in his head. This is an extreme move, but I have no other choice. My goal is to restore the family. Looking straight into Heinkel's eyes, he finally said the words he had decided on: use me as the Rainland family's dark mage. Even after saying it, Klein continued to think to himself, now make your decision, Heinkel Rainland. He added, if you truly believe I am not the reincarnation of Archimonde. Another thought immediately followed: will he use me to save the family, or let the whole house fall into ruin? Silence filled the room. Heinkel stood there, quietly reflecting on everything that had happened since Klein returned to the Principality. Finally, he spoke in a low voice, when you first returned to the Principality, even though you had been locked in a correctional facility for 7 years, you still called me father without a hint of resentment, even though I am a pathetic father who couldn't protect your future. Hearing those words, Klein was surprised and thought, turns out father has kept that in his heart all this time. Heinkel's remorse was clearly deeper than what Klein had realized. After a long silence, Heinkel finally looked at him and gave his answer. Don't worry anymore. At this point, I have neither the right nor the reason to stop you. So, go ahead and do as you wish. Those simple words carried immense weight, as they represented acceptance, trust, and permission all at once. The barrier Klein feared most had finally been lifted. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man was quietly reading a letter while sitting alone. The content of the letter seemed to interest him greatly. After reading it, he said calmly, it's time for me to meet Klein. Can you bring him to me? Leia, standing nearby, immediately bowed respectfully and replied, as you command, Archduke Helion.